Good evening. Welcome to the Lewiston City Council regular meeting of June 20th, 2014. Oh, June 23rd. Sorry, I'm looking at the amended packet here. And in fact, speaking of the amended packet, we do have a little correction on some things which it's council's pleasure. We're going to have the first and second readings of ordinance 4608. It was an oversight. So, and the third on the active agenda. Thank you. Okay, call this meeting to order. Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilor Blakey.
All right. Out of courtesy of flag, could you please take your hats off? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is citizen comments. It's an opportunity for citizens to address the council on agenda items or other items they wish to bring to the attention of the council. Citizens are encouraged to discuss operational issues in advance with the city manager, and in consideration of others wishing to speak, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Do we have any citizen comments? Mr. Hewlett, name and address for the record, please.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, my name is Joe Hewlett. My address is 1807 Clearview Point Drive in Lewiston. As you know, I'm a member of the URA board, the newest member. My interest in the URA originated when I was in Moscow managing a business there. I witnessed the successful operation of one URA district and the formation of a second district. I was very pleased that the council, and remain pleased that the council has permitted me to play a role in guiding the Lewiston URA, and it's in that role that I'd like to just say a few words about the current status of Plan 2. Joanne Cole-Hansen and I, as you know, are the two at-large members of the URA board. She's an accountant, and I'm a retired businessman and economist, and we share the characteristic that we're both numbers people. That's one reason why she and I collaborated to develop an evaluation tool, which you've seen, that will help, I feel indeed, compel the URA board to score its long list of potential projects objectively and systematically. I'm here to assure you that that will be the case. It's the board's intention to examine the list of potential projects and to present the council a thoroughly vetted short list by July 14th. Some have asserted that because we are not directly elected, members of the URA board cannot be trusted to act as careful stewards of taxpayer dollars. I respectfully and strongly disagree with that assertion, and I believe that the board's examination and pairing of the list of potential projects will demonstrate its commitment to fiscal responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor and Council, my name is Steve Moore, and I reside at 3404 17th Street in the Lewiston Orchards. And my property abuts the Warner Vacation right-of-way vacation that's in VA 06 2014. The southwest corner of that property abuts the northeast corner of my property, if you look on the map, and that Warner is access to the northern end of my property. You can't come in from the west side because there's a very deep ravine there, as most of you are aware. So I am here to publicly oppose that vacation, simply because if that goes, then I have no guarantee to access to that back part of my property. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
May I ask a question of them?
Certainly.
Sir, Mr. Moore?
Yes.
I'm just curious, did you voice that opinion also at the zoning meeting?
No, this was, I just found out about this week, so, or I would have.
There was no meeting?
As soon as I heard about it.
Oh, my mistake, there was no meeting, so that's what I'm curious about.
Mike Lorenz, 458 Crestline Circle Drive. I'm here to talk about that URA. I guess there are some good points to that URA as far as fixing infrastructure and taking care of that, but I guess the one, too, I have the problem with is, first off, that putting $2 million into up there on that shopping center for the McCanns and this other developer. I mean, it's even been admitted that, we're going to dump this interchange out on Gun Club Road and down the road. Well, what about fixing the rest of the road? Well, that doesn't seem to enter the play. I mean, I think before you take my tax money and put that into an interchange like that, I think you really need to find out what's going to happen to the rest of this road and who's going to be responsible for it. Because I had a conversation with one of the parties that are involved in that, and when I asked him, well, what are you going to do with Gun Club Road, and his thoughts and his exact thing, well, we'll worry about it later. Well, it's pretty obvious it wasn't his tax money he was fooling with. And the second one is spending $4 million on a property down there where Twin City Foods was. They said, we do a barely adequate job of maintaining the streets and everything else in this town, and then we're going to buy this thing, and then we're going to hope to attract businesses, and then we're going to tell them, well, this is what you got to do. Well, that doesn't sound like a good way to attract businesses to me. I said, I think it is. It's, you are fiscally responsible for this. This isn't play money. This is people's hard-earned tax dollar, and it just seems like this URA's just become an ATM machine that, well, we'll never close this thing. We'll just keep it going and going and going, and we'll just keep taking money out. And I said, I don't think that's what it's there for. I think it's just like the Port of Lewiston. Why are they even in that thing? I already support them through tax money. They're their own taxing entity. So it's like, well, this looks like a pretty good deal to me. We're kind of like a parasite, just, hop on board and away we go. They have their own money. They have their own, they can tax, they can do bonds, whatever they want to improve that. And it just seems like nobody questions that. It's just like, we'll let them on there and what the heck. I think they just need to go from there. I just think you need to do a better job with, my money and the rest of these people's money. And a lot of people work awful hard in this town to, just make a living and get by. And when they see the way money gets spent, then you wonder why people don't vote for anything in this town. Because, the lies and, the, misspent money and, so I don't know. You guys were elected to do a better job than the last two that got unelected, and people watch and they see and they read this stuff. So I don't think for a minute that they aren't paying attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Walter Phillips. I reside at 3724 10th Street here in Lewiston, Idaho. And I just had a couple things that I wanted to bring up. The port, we just agreed to a $600,000 deal where we're doing $205,000 improvement to a road going into their property, which is pretty much a giveaway one, in my opinion. Second one is, the port has quite enough money in reserve to take care of themselves, in my opinion. Now, it's awful convenient to use the URA to improve that area down there. What buildings are we looking at? What properties or what businesses are looking at coming into that area? I'd like a little bit more input on that from the City Council. A couple other things. Jed Randall brought up the last City Council meeting. I wasn't here, but I watched. And he brought up that there was agreement up on the terrace that they would pay to put that whole road in, or at least that's what I understand. I haven't seen it, but he did mention that. If there was an agreement made, I would expect an honorable man to honor that agreement and not have us flip 50% of the bill on a road. So that's about all I have to say today. You guys have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no takers, we'll move on to presentations and public hearings. First up is a presentation, URA Plan Progress Report, which I think everybody received this weekend.
Good
Ms.
evening,
Von
Mayor.
Church.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I might, Laura. Just a couple introduction comments. As council knows, tonight's our second reading. Third reading will be on July 14th. It's been a lot of healthy debate, a lot of great questions. A couple more came out tonight, and I'm optimistic that if we don't answer those completely tonight, we'll certainly have those no later than the 14th, if not sooner. But I do want to comment that the board, the agency, you heard from Mr. Hewlett tonight. There's been a lot of work, just even since the June 9th meeting. It has been a tight window. Council just gave us the green light to move ahead in May. So there's been a lot of action, a lot of work by a lot of folks. There's 2 additional meetings this week alone with the Urban Renewal Agency. And so I think I hope you'll be pleased, but we certainly want to hear if there's other questions that we can vet out. It's kind of a unique balance that we need to keep our eye on long-term visioning and planning for future generations, for other citizens, but at the same time, vet out the details. So like Joe had mentioned, we've got a lot of number crunchers, a lot of accountants on the group, so we are looking at the details, being very mindful of that. For example, and I think you'll see tonight, the mapping and the port. I think it's easy to say that Area 1 is a port project. I think you'll see tonight that those are city streets. Those are city streets that serve private industry. So we need to address that. And I think without further ado, I want to mention that Ms. Von Tersch, our director, will lead the discussion, and Chairman Hasserall as well going to speak. So,
Thank you. Laura?
Mayor and council, there were some issues brought up at the last meeting that I would like to take the time to respond to, and the staff prepared quite a lengthy report for you just to solidify everything we could. And I've got just the littlest bit of a presentation, and this is only an example. You probably have 20 additional pages in your packet that looks something like this. And it is an engineer's report that goes through the quantities and the construction costs for a given piece of work. And so when I heard Councilman Collins said he would like more information on the costs, this is how I responded. And so we have quite a bit of additional cost information on projects you had seen, and then costs that we had not included before, such as the downtown parking lot. This is an example of the actual quantities and costs associated with the first and fifth rebuild project that was modified to apply to any complete street in a brownfield condition, which is to say it's in a developed area where you're going to have to work around a lot of utilities. There might be underground storage tanks, and that is reflected in things like engineering fees and contingencies. So you have big pages of that. There was a remark by one of the presenters that the increment value that the URA is working on somehow disappears. And so what this slide comes out of the State Tax Commission website, and also their budget and tax training that they put on every year for the communities. And you'll see in bullet 7 down here at the bottom, it speaks to what happens when an urban renewal agency, the revenue allocation area, is dissolved. That increase is reflected as new construction for the levying entities to build on their budget. So if one year we have $1 million of assessed value, we could take a maximum 3% tax increase off that assessed value, but new construction is then added. So you get 3% more than you got last year if you care to take it, and then the dissolved revenue allocation area increment, you could take 3% on that as well as new construction. So the revenues are not lost. This map is the property west of Memorial Bridge that is often referred to as the port. And I think it shows quite clearly that there are multiple owners, multiple businesses, and certainly the port has some property there, but they're not the majority interest. And I say that from the standpoint of geographic area and numbers of persons affected. So what we have on this map, everything dashed in white is owned by somebody other than the port. So for the first couple blocks from the bridge, that's all private. And then you do end up with some port-owned property that are leased to private business interests that pay taxes. And I think maybe this concern came up with this notion that we would be investing tax money into something that wouldn't produce a tax return back to the community from the standpoint of increased assessed value. And with the number of private businesses there, I'm not sure that you could make that argument. But certainly you could look at it and say, well, those are city roads, and the city does have that responsibility. Where the URA comes in is that they can make things happen on an accelerated time frame, and they can target capital improvements, whereas the city has to work a little slower with their street preservation activities. This map shows the port ownership in the Nez Perce Terrace Business and Tech Park. And it's just the four gray shaded parcels that are immediately south of the Home Depot and the line shops. So the district goes, and I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but yeah, the district goes clear over here and down to Gun Club Road. So you can see that the district is quite a bit larger than what the port has an ownership in. This is a working draft of the plan evaluation tool, and it's had a couple changes since you saw it last. We have weighted the criteria. So starting at the top of the page, the most important thing from the URA's perspective in making their investments is to create jobs. Moving down, increase property tax base, bring outside money into the LC Valley. And then the leverage and the financing just has to do with other partners coming to the table, public or private, who has the burden of, a bond, or you using money at hand, and those kinds of things. So we start with a ranking of 5 for jobs, and we end up with a ranking of 1 in terms of weighted criteria to accelerate another big project. We then have grouped things into first tier and second tier. And the URA is going to be taking a look at that in particular tomorrow, and also doing the ranking. But the first tier projects are like a first priority project, and you'll see that the road work in the port, 18th, 20th, and 6th Avenue North have been consolidated. Actually, 6th Avenue North is an addition, but the other ones had been consolidated. We had this list of like 10 or 12 things all associated with either 18th Avenue North or 20th Avenue North, and it wouldn't have made sense to construct it that way. So I thought that by consolidating on the table, it was a little bit clearer what you're looking at in terms of total cost. The other change on this table, we have the cost for public parking, and then on the Twin City Foods, it's really not just acquisition that we might be looking at, but we're trying to incentivize the development. And so what would that mean? Somebody comes forward and they say, hey, can I have help with a sewer line extension? Or I need some help with parking. Or Beachy Street is completely inadequate to bring my traffic on my front door, these kinds of things. And so it would be looking at those infrastructure needs that will be caused by private development of Twin City Foods that we might be able to assist with. So the URA is going to be looking at this in more detail tomorrow, including ranking the individual projects. Oops. I think I'm out with my slides. So the approach I took in terms of preparing your staff report was to give you more information, and most of that is reflected in additional cost information on projects, the refinement of the tool, the response to some of the comments you heard. So, for example, one of the comments was about acquiring Twin City Foods, which I think we've addressed. It was just how it was labeled, but it's really about incentivizing development. But even if we did acquire it, or had that as a policy choice, it's $22,000 in taxes. So while that's an important number in terms of the city tax pot or the county tax pot, it's not a big number to be concerned with. Mr. Randall had brought forward the Nez Perce Terrace development agreement and the resolution adopting some traffic mitigations. We've distributed those already, and they're also in your packet. And he is correct in that there's no obligation for the city or the county, for that matter, to build this road. We're under no obligation. It's simply a policy choice about trying to accelerate the development of some properties that could bring jobs to the community. So it's strictly a policy choice. But they adopted that traffic study in 2000. And it's 14 years later, and they've had some momentum in terms of development up there. Do they have enough momentum to overcome a small market without direct freeway access? I mean, can we keep the momentum going? Those are the issues that the council needs to weigh. I have the chair of the Urban Renewal Agency with me tonight, and I'd like to invite her up to provide some remarks because she wasn't able to do that at our last meeting. And then at the appropriate time, I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. I appreciate this opportunity, and I appreciate your patience with the revising of the URA plan. It's been good, I think, for all parties to come together and kind of vent this whole process and let us explain to you the benefit from it. It's been an educational process on both parts, and I think we've had some really good discussion. We've come up with a very good ranking tool that I think if you let us work that ranking tool, we can provide a list of projects that will be beneficial, or we'll go through the ranking tool and we'll pair those projects with the criteria, and we'll say, you know what, there's no projects that rise high enough on this with this ranking tool, so there won't be projects to do. So I think if you will let us complete that ranking tool and move forward, I think that's a great way to implement that into this revised plan. And I also wanted to address some concerns I keep hearing about the North Lewiston revenue allocation area that the port, and Laura address some of the concerns that this is an area that strictly has port projects. It doesn't. The port is located in the North Lewiston revenue allocation area, and the streets in there, as you know, are in very much need of repair, and we're going to start losing businesses, start losing traffic, truck traffic in that area if we can't keep those roads up. So I think that the URA could potentially be a good tool to reconstruct some of those roads and get those up to where they should be. We look forward to moving this proactive tool forward and get back to you with some solid rankings on these. And I also would encourage everybody to, if you have questions, to make sure you ask us. Don't take what you've heard from your neighbor or your friend and say, well, this is what I heard or this is what I know. The URA staff has done a great job in updating the website, trying to address concerns. So please go to the website, look at that. And if you can't get the information that you need from there, make sure you come to one of the URA board members and try and get the information from them directly rather than just promoting rumors and things that aren't necessarily they're just half-truths. Again, thank you. I really do appreciate this opportunity to work with the URA and City Council and move these projects forward, because I think this is a tool that we can use to get some things done to promote businesses and help develop the city. So thank you very much.
Mary?
Yes.
Just a question.
Sure.
And the comment's been made, and I think we know that there are several roads that are substandard out there, but if you're worried about losing business, I mean, where are they going to go?
Well, so those trucks will not, they'll stop coming into the port. They'll start taking other routes, doing their business other places.
Well, I mean, we've got the Port of Wilma, and then Port of Clarkson doesn't even have a crane anymore, so I guess my point being, there aren't a lot of options for the out-of-area truckers to go.
Well, and they can go to the Port of Wilma. There's infrastructure going into place over there that we could start losing business to the Port of Wilma. Thank you. Anything else?
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to point out on the streets, since we're talking about those, I actually looked up the numbers from all the streets that were listed in this packet, and based on the numbers provided by the Public Works Director, a lot of these, so the average baseline target index that we're trying to hit is 77 out of 100. A lot of these streets, here's one that's 90, several are another one that's 90, 76, 88. So they're not as bad as, I looked through 100 pages of other streets throughout the whole city, and a lot of them are at 0 ratings. None of these appear to be at a 0 index rating, so it doesn't appear to be as bad as you're suggesting.
So I don't know anything about the ranking. All I know is about when I see the streets and there's bits of gravel on them, and that if we don't do something soon, that it will take a total redo of that road out there with the truck traffic on it. Yeah. So I don't know when the ranking was done, or I don't know anything about the ranking.
I'll just, if I may.
I'll defer. Sure.
Yeah, 18th Avenue and or 18th Street and 20th are probably to the point of hopelessness. So those were two that were proposed. So,
Mr. Mayor?
yes.
And I'd be happy to ask Mr. Davies to report back and clarify those, because that's a very good point, Councilor Johnson. There's kind of a disconnect there, and so we'll ask him to report on that and clarify that for us as well.
These numbers were actually sent by Mr. Davies to us about a month ago.
Right, yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm aware of that, but there's obviously a clear a visual disconnect. You can look at it, and like Mr. Mayor said, some are visually cracking and falling apart. One of the other things, too, is there's an economies of scale we need to be mindful, and while the city may not have it on our next 5 years reconstruction, they're shortly thereafter, and it becomes a funding issue. And there's a break-even point where there's the maintenance of chip sealing, other maintenance techniques that can extend that life. But if you get beyond that and it's too late, then of course you're looking at reconstruction, and in that case it's well over $1 million per road mile to reconstruct. So it's kind of like paint the house now; it's a lot cheaper, and so we are kind of we need to be mindful of that as well. The other tool, since we're talking about the North Lewiston piece, is financing options. I think it was brought up by council, I know it was, about the trucking industries and the potential of having private investment. We met today with our financial advisor with Zions Bank, who assisted the city on our other project, and all of those options are open to us. You can wrap in a public-private partnership. We could put a special assessment in place, and so all of that. Of course, we'd have to have the conversations with those private businesses, but all those are possible options in wrapping the financing. So.
Okay. Councilor Daniel?
I had some questions for Laura or Mary. I don't know which one, when you want to come up. So how how many tiers are there? Because this one has the first tier projects, correct? Is there, how many other, is there a second, third, fourth? How many?
There's a second tier, and the second tier includes the freight projects, the rail projects that were not ranked highly by the Port Board, and the heavy freight corridor, because there's no way for us to cost out that in time. But what I had included in your packet was from ITD proving up that their piece of the network would be sufficient to handle the load. And since we just did East Main, presumably that would be capable as well, but I don't know what happens when we get west of the bridge. So, sorry, I rambled. There's a second tier, and then there's a very slight discussion in the plan about this notion of other things that could happen. We're just memorializing that conversation in the plan. You might consider that a third tier if you wish, but that's the end.
Okay. So the board did decide that a food incubator building and the equipment for it was a top priority because it's on.
Well, we're still ranking individual projects. So I can't say that the board's weighed in that from that direction, but if you're looking strictly at job creation, they're going to come in higher than road maintenance project, as I understand the ranking, but it remains to be worked through and then delivered to you in July.
Okay, so I guess at this point, we don't actually have an idea what the actual plan is. We have a bunch of projects that maybe URA would like to do at some point if they can afford it, but right now it's still just a wish list. We don't, I mean, to me, the plan's not done. If you haven't ranked them out yet, I don't see how the plan's done yet.
Okay, there's a difference between projects and plan. A plan is normally a framework for action that includes policy direction. And from that standpoint, the plan's pretty clear. We've got 3 revenue allocation areas. We want to use infrastructure as a primary investment tool to promote private investment and land development to create jobs. And we have stepped through the implications of that framework for, how would we administer requests over time? Okay, so that's a plan. That sets your vision and your marching orders, if you will. Well, we know we have statute we've got to follow, and we know we're going to be working with procurement policies. The project list is your implementation of that vision. And so projects can come and go as long as you stand true to the vision. And that's why I would make that differentiation.
Okay. Did you have something?
Yes. Isn't it also true over there in the port area that as far as the roads are concerned, we're also looking, or URA is also looking at improving the water and sewer lines in that area, such as they've improved the water lines over on the east side of the east side of the highway.
Yeah. Before we would undertake a road construction project, we would identify the current state of all the utilities underneath the pavement and whether they are sufficient and have remaining life in them, because the last thing we want is to build a new road and then cut into it.
Yeah, that was one of my big concerns was the fact you got that warehouse over there, a huge warehouse over there, and then the big one is the silos over there, whether we even got enough water flow to fight any major catastrophe over there. So that would be my concern. And if we're going to tear it up for the water and for that reason, we might as well take care of the rest of it too while we're at it. It'll save us some money in the long run.
Laura, so at this point, the URA hasn't looked at costs that would be for Gun Club and other roads that'd be impacted by the road that's going to connect to Gun Club?
No, in fact, we've had an interesting conversation about Gun Club, and I think the board has a different perspective now on Gun Club. They'd been responding to this concern from either the city or the county that there's going to be impacts to Gun Club, and certainly they would be, with where we were almost having to defend the action. In reality, the URA has always wanted to be a funding entity rather than a construction manager, which was the position we were in on First and Fifth. And from that standpoint, people have to come forward and say, this is what we want and why, and then you evaluate it. And so I don't think it's the URA's responsibility to consider the impacts to Gun Club. I think they need to be known before any road work is put forward. But really, if the city and the county think that this is necessary, then they have a responsibility as well to make it happen. And just on the most simple level, Gun Club is outside of the revenue allocation area, so we couldn't spend money on it. You know, other parties are going to have to come forward, and if they don't come forward, the road either won't go in or Gun Club will be addressed at a later date. You know, however the community chooses to respond to that.
Councilor Daniel?
I do gotta just make a statement to that. If someone was to build a dam on a river, they wouldn't just look at the cost to building the dam, they'd have to look at the costs downstream and upstream, the impacts on other properties. And in my mind, with building this road, you have to look at the cost impacts to other roads.
Well, the URA is limited by statute about where they can spend their money. And unless we want to expand the revenue allocation area to include Gun Club, which is a legitimate option to consider negotiating with the county to allow a means to solve this problem, we can't spend money there anyhow. And Gun Club, or Nez Perce Drive, I think is more akin to Bryden Canyon. When that road went in, there were people who said it wasn't needed. We could do just fine with driving people down 21st to Main and then back around to go to Asotin or wherever they're going. But look at it now. I mean, what's it carrying? 16,000 trips a day? I mean, this is a game changer. This is not a driveway for a developer. This is a game changer in terms of an east-west arterial route that we are severely lacking in this town.
Laura, I'm not saying that the road itself is a bad idea. What I'm saying is you can't just look at the small picture. You have to look at the big picture. What's the real cost? We're all county taxpayers as well, regardless of whether or not it's in the URA district or just the general city or the county. We're all going to pay for it one way or another. And I don't think that's a good plan to say, well, this road's a good idea, but we're not even going to consider what it's going to cost.
Yeah, and you're making a very valid point, but if we could get to the point where we were actually having a conversation with the county on this, we could jointly apply for LTAC funding and have about a 3 or 7% match, and the URA could make that match. But as it is, we just can't have these discussions because they're not open to it.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Marsh?
I might add, from day one when this project was brought forth, the URA has been extremely sensitive, Councilor, to the impact of that, and that's been documented. And at the time, we recommended that, as Ms. Von Tersch mentioned, there's only so much the URA can do, but we are sensitive to that. First and foremost is safety. There are some things we can do to make sure that on day one, that intersection is well lit, designed, maybe some guardrails. There's some things maybe we can work with the developer where perhaps the developer invests in some of those safety issues where the URA money is more than 50% in one area. But the reality is, I'll speak from the city standpoint. We bought that community park. We've got a new Catholic church going in. There's a tremendous amount of growth and development that's going to affect the south side. So the city is considering that. The city has a responsibility to continue to go through those conversations. And additionally, the county as well. The Lindsay Creek Road interceptor, the reality is that's where their concern is. But that's not a new concept. That's been on their plan for a long time. So I can almost bet you're going to see a strong recommendation from the URA that says something to the effect, whatever we can do possibly, we will do, subject to code limitations. However, the city and the county, please really just get together and cooperate. I don't think you're going to see the fallouts in the first 6 months or the first year even. The traffic patterns show that it's going to take a 5 to 7 year build out. But I just would encourage us not to be reluctant on a project because we're afraid of what the fallout or the rollout might be. But that's the URA. I believe that's where the URA stance is going to be, as a strong recommendation. The city and county, we get together and we figure out what we need to do.
Dan, sorry. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Laura, maybe you can answer this too. Going back to Council Randall's comment on Resolution 2000-08, thank you. Still does put the cost of the traffic improvements on the developer. So whether it's a little bit of a shared cost with the city and the county and the developer, I think the developer's still on the hook for the bottom of the road, particularly the top of the road. I don't know how it worked out with the Catholic Church when they built a big auditorium up there at 14th and Warner, that if they had to pay into any kind of future impacts or not, because that's certainly going to generate a fair amount of traffic, and anybody building a facility like that probably should have been on the hook for contributing a portion to the future improvement of Warner and 14th by extension. We're expecting that of Noel and Kurt Bloom on their apartment complex at the top of 17th and Stewart. So I don't know if you can speak to that or...
Well, I can tell you that the Public Works Department would have required a traffic impact analysis because they're generating more than 100 trips a day, but what the outcome of that, I'm not clear on. I know they had to do the perimeter roads, and they only wanted to do one access road, and I think we got two, but if they had any off-site exactions, I'm not clear.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Randall.
One of the comments that Laura made was that the plan doesn't necessarily include a detailed list of project costs. Why it may not necessarily be in written form that it has to. However, included in our packet that we got for this weekend was the Appendix D, Idaho Statutes, Title 50, Chapter 29. And if you read down there, toward the end of the first paragraph, it says, the plan shall include, and then it lists down 1 through 8. And down there on the fourth one, it says a detailed list of estimated project costs. And if you make an amendment to that plan, it should be the same thing. A detailed list of the costs of the projects. So I agree with Councilor Daniel that I don't think that so far we've actually got a solid plan. All we've got is a wish list, and it hasn't, although not to say that it's not being worked on. We've got a lot more information than we did before when we first started. So, I think that's enough.
Thank you. Councilor Blakey.
Two comments. Actually, the first one, I agree and I disagree with on both sides of the fence with you on Jed. I think we have a solid plan. The process, we have revised it. We have revised the document, and we've done a very good job of revising the document. We are now on what I call the next step of revising the document. That's identifying the projects. And I agree with you there, there's much work to be done. I brought that up in today's meeting. We will continue to refine these numbers and refine this list tomorrow. And if I'm not mistaken, we'll have another meeting on this upcoming Thursday to, correct?
Yes.
I wrote that down, thank you. That we're going to continue this process again with the anticipation, as Joe said, that we, on July the 14th, we will have a final estimate document, close estimate, the word estimate, we use that word, a final list of details. So I agree with you that I believe that the plan is solid, but we are still working on the estimate aspect of it. And it's coming. It's coming. So may I finish my other comment was? Gun Club Road. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, but 2 or 3 URA meetings back, we had Eric Hasenrahl do a report, and Mr. Davies was at that meeting and gave us an update or gave us a review of the 2000 traffic study, which was the most recent traffic study done in Gun Club, and that was done in conjunction with all of the early development up there in the pad, when all the intersections was looked at and all the recommendations were looked at for increasing this and doing that. And at that time, Mr. Hazarall's study, the study done, not done by Mr. Hazarall, but the study that's done, indicated that Gun Club is an underused road, can hold more traffic than it's currently holding. There's room for improvements. So the question was brought up, and we said, boy, it seems awful narrow. And Mr. Davies brought up, says, it's 2 feet wider than what we normally would ask a road to be. The road is actually wider than the city standards of what we asked Gun Club to be. And so my question to him is point blank. I said, could Gun Club hold the traffic from this project? And he goes, his answer is yes, with the stipulation that a turning lane be built down at the bottom of the intersection. A turning lane is required. Some aspect of turning lane would have to be built to accommodate left-hand turns. But outside of that, he says, in his professional opinion, that road has plenty of room to accommodate more traffic. So I just wanted to say that a study has been done. There is a report out there. We keep saying, oh, we don't know. Granted, it's old, but I'm not so sure. Granted, on the growth of Lewiston, I don't know how much more traffic has actually been dumped on that road since then, a few percentage points higher. But
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Randall.
One thing on my presentation of the Resolution 2000-08 that I would like to propose that may URA consider is that rightfully the way it's right now, that the developer should bear all the cost of the road building going down to Gun Club. But I don't see why we couldn't have a amendment to that resolution by all the parties, agreed upon by all the parties, such that 1/2 and all the overrun or any job changes be handled by the developer, and the other half be split evenly with the 3 parties, the city, the URA, and the port, because they're all getting benefits from that road if it goes through. And so I don't see why we couldn't work something like that out as far as paying for the costs. And I think it would make it reasonably priced for the port and the city of Lewiston and the URA if we went that route.
You copying that?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the resolution and development agreement that Mr. Randall has referenced is an agreement between the city of Lewiston and the developer, and it requires him to do road improvements as specified by the traffic study. And I'm still trying to track down this traffic study. I think Public Works has it, and they're supposed to be getting it to me. So I don't know exactly what traffic improvements are required of the developer. It wouldn't actually be an amendment to this development agreement as much as it would be a new agreement for some kind of development in the area, because this is, as I said, specifically between the city and the McCanns in that area, and the other 2 people involved in the public in the planned unit development.
Okay.
So it's not precluded from doing it, but I just don't know that we could do it as an amendment to this.
Something we could certainly consider. Councilor Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, what I'm hearing here is a huge work in progress. You know, I'm counting 13 projects on here. We've already had our public hearing. We've opened and closed the public hearing, and then community development dumped this huge packet with me, personally handed it to me on Friday, and it's got all kinds of new data in here. We've got an incomplete evaluation tool survey that's still going to be populated with information. When are the citizens going to have a chance to respond if the hearing's already closed and we're adding all this information?
I think we've been adding information but whittling down projects.
Well, it sounds like to me that this needs to go back to a work session, and there, I agree with Councilor Blakey. There's a lot more work that needs to be done, and we need to whittle down the projects before it comes back and open a new hearing so that the citizens can respond to all this new information. This is millions of dollars we're looking at here.
Potentially.
It's all listed on here.
Well, I think tonight we're going to be asked to approve the second reading of this. And I guess I'm prepared to make that recommendation that we approve the second reading of this. We allow the URA to do their work now that has to be done in the meetings between now and the 14th of July. And there you will see a finished product, and we'll have another opportunity for a very good debate. And I believe at that point in time, this evaluation tool that will be filled out, I know it will be filled out, I assure you it'll be filled out. And it'll also be whittled down even further. There'll be a number of projects that I believe will fall off this list, and you will see something that it will be much easier to work with and live with. Laura pointed out something. I think the challenge that we're going to have is balancing job growth with cost of project growth. And there's going to be a conflict of interest there. We're going to be saying, do new roads bring new job growth immediately? No, but with a incubator bring new job growth. We've all seen the success of Seekins. We've all seen the success of Worldwide Abrasive, and we've seen Clearwater Winery. I'm not saying that's a project that may raise to the top here, but it's possible that it'll be a recommendation that we as an opportunity still have a chance to say no to. So we can debate this till the cows come home tonight, but I would propose that we move forward with the vote, and move on and allow us another couple more weeks of hard work.
I'm done asking questions. I'm not sure who to ask. Councilor Blake?
Start here and I'll look somewhere else.
Since you're on the board. So both the mayor and pro tem brought up the term whittling down projects. Are we whittling down projects, or are we just prioritizing them? I think they're two very different things.
Use of the same word, and I'm probably using it too liberally. It's prioritizing. Excuse me, there's my speech impediment. It's prioritizing the projects. And again, they will be graded. And at that point in time, we also are going to look at this, and even though a project may score well, it'll be a possibility that it's really not one that we think you as a board will accept. We as a board will accept. The opposition may be too great. And even though we may present it, we may also realize it's not going to happen. But it's a process of whittling down is a country term for prioritizing.
Okay. I'll have another comment once we get to the actual reading of it.
Okay.
I'm done asking questions.
Councilor Collins.
Mr. Mayor. Laura, thank you for defining the plan and project differentiations there for us. That helped me quite a bit, and this tool, I think, I like the way it sets it up. I like the way that it prioritizes creating jobs and things like that, but I do have a couple of questions, and whittling down specific projects, whatever it might be, and part of it is, with our packets, we received some information on a potential food processing center, which is on this list here as part of Tier 1 and Priority 1. Just above it on our list, it says new incubator building only. Is that one and the same with this, or is this a separate entity?
They could be separate entities. The food processing center could become a tenant of an incubator, but certainly an incubator could be constructed for a less specific type of tenant, and it would just be an expansion of what the port is already doing.
If I may continue.
Certainly.
Within that packet, and I know, and the reason I ask that is because within the packet that was directly associated with the food processing center or the incubator, whichever you want to put on it, it showed a proposed site. And in trying to read the map that you had that showed all the different businesses, who owned what within North Lewiston, the proposed incubator site, if I read the map right, and it gets really small there, is on port property. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The reason I bring that up is I see this list here of projects or potential projects, tiers, priorities, things like that, and just a few months ago we went through a rather lengthy deal when it came to the transfer station being on port property, and then us actually having to, and I say having, purchasing that property so we wouldn't potentially lose the building. I look at this and see a potential project on port property that and I think I'm going to quote the mayor in saying, I don't know how we got into this, but 20 years from now or 10 years from now, I hate to see a council going, we need to buy this piece of property because.
Because we're renting it.
Because we're renting it, yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
And so, and the reason I'm asking this whole long question here is I see these things on here, the incubator building, food processing center on this here, but then I don't see property associated with it or costs with it that are going to be, so somebody's going to have to pay it, whether now or whether later. And I hate to take out a loan for somebody else to have to pay down the road. And I think that's where my question is, why I'd like to see specific projects and the whole picture. I want to see the whole picture. Incubator building looks great. I think it's a great idea. I love the food processing idea. But then I see on a piece of property that the city doesn't own.
Yeah. Well, my thought was that the URA, as a distinct entity from the city, would only be contributing the monies to purchase the building, and then they would walk away from it for the cost of $1 or whatever it is, and it would be a port-owned and managed facility. They have the management experience with their existing incubator, and they have the tenant contacts to make it happen. The URA has expressed no interest in being a landowner or a long-term manager of properties. We're not geared to do that. We would prefer to build infrastructure and give it away and let it do its work.
Does that make sense?
Yes, if I could just get a clarification. So in the end, if the URA builds this building on port property and you say give it away to $1, well, who owns this building now?
The Port of Lewiston.
The Port of Lewiston owns the building. Okay.
So they'd be contributing the land. It would be improved by the URA, and then they would have the ongoing management function of the incubator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Councilor Daniel.
One more question. There's just a rumor that I heard, but is there some sort of online survey going on with this? Like, is there?
Oh. May I comment on that?
Yeah,
Certainly.
No, you're referring to an email that I sent out early on, right after we had a meeting. I sent an email out the following night because we were doing what we call Survey Monkey, which on there we are asked to prioritize the top line, what we felt was the most important item and how we should score that 1, 5, 3. I took it a step further and said, in that email, I said, I think we're running out of time. And I think it's imperative that as a URA, we don't sit there and be slow on this issue. We need to hurry up on this issue. And I recommended that either we get together and have another initial meeting before our scheduled meeting tomorrow, which we did meet today. I actually tried to meet last week, but there wasn't enough of us around. And I did make the recommendation in the email that maybe we all should take this survey it, and have the information all sent in and gathered. I believe I was corrected right away and say, no, we can't do that. That would be a form of a public meeting.
Okay.
So no, it was a recommendation, but I was quickly commented by, I think it was Jim. Said, no, we couldn't do that.
Okay, any other comments? Councilor Blakey.
I do want to correct some information from right off in the very beginning of the meeting. Councilor Johnson commented on some of the roads. And so I trust but I verify. And I went back and checked. Of the 3 roads that we have listed for construction purposes, 20th does have a very good rating. I won't argue there. It's in the 90s, so I suspect we have to look at that and see why it's in the 90s and why is it on our list. Again, that'll be a conversation that we need to, as a URA, come back and review. Why does the city have it at such a high rating and we're looking at rebuilding it? So there may be other issues there that's not being missed, and so I appreciate Councilor bringing that up. But 6th Avenue North, every street listed on there has an under 50 rating, with some of them is under 10, in fact. And then 18th Avenue North, of the 1,344 feet, 285 have a rating of 85 or better. Below that, though, the balance of it, 1,100 feet, and some of it has no rating at all. It's 0, with an average rating of 5. So those streets, 2 out of 3 of them are hurting. I will follow up and investigate why one that has a high rating is on this list, though.
Thanks. Councilor Randall.
One of the things too you have to consider on those ratings is when the ratings were done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something we need to check to see if, if the rating was done 5 years ago, maybe the road's been torn up since then, for whatever reason. And so that's something you might take a look at when you're looking at the road.
I don't think any of them gotten any better.
Where'd you find that at? I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
We were sent by, Mr. Davies sent an email
stack
out
of-
dated,
Road ratings.
Oh, okay, I got
what
you.
was the date, RJ?
know what you're
I'm
talking
showing
about.
June 4th.
Okay.
There was an email sent to all of us with 3 PDF attachments to it.
Yeah, because they're rather large.
Yeah, I've been scrolling through them here.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to clarify, I didn't say that all of them had a flawless rating, so there are some that are worse than others, but I noticed you were only talking about the 3 that were on the prioritized list. I was actually looking at the memorandum that was sent, that was revised on June 16th, 2014, lists several other streets, including 3rd Avenue and 20th Street, 18th Street, 14th Street North. So I just was pulling a few numbers that were on there. I see 90, 76, 88.
I think those were taken off, those streets were taken off the memorandum, out of the survey.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, I know we need to
Mr. Marsh.
transition. I know we need to transition. Just want to remind the group that the primary goal of URA is a couple things: economic development or improvement of slum and blight. It's not the goal to own property or even assist with it. We do need to be mindful of future costs that might come back at us. Boomerang. We certainly want to be mindful of that. But when the URA was first established in 1999, the purpose was to build a building. We were trying to attract a call center. Mark Travel, in fact, was the name, to Lewiston. So in that case, we were actually entertaining conversations to build a building, step away. We wouldn't own any of the building, and it would basically be turned over to the private sector. So it's a way to provide stimulus for the private sector to create the jobs. We step back out of the way and let that happen. The property of Schweitzer's End. We certainly don't own any of the Schweitzer property. The same thing there. We improve the property and we step away. So I just felt that, our goal is not either as a city or as a URA to own property. It's to assist or accelerate economic development.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Okay, gentlemen, shall we move on?
Sure.
Okay, next up, we have a public hearing, It's vacation, VA 06-2014. Applicants Mark Rogers requesting the vacation of a portion of a 30-foot wide undeveloped right-of-way of Warner Avenue located northwest of the first stage of the Estates of Canyon Crest for the purpose of pursuing a better street layout for the Estates of Canyon Crest Stage 2. Mr. Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce Dan Hayhurst, our city surveyor, and Dan will step us through this particular request.
Good evening. It's always an honor to be in front of the council. Tonight we've got a proposed vacation to step through. All right. The petitioner for this is Mark Rogers. The location of this is, the requested vacation area is a portion of the 30-foot wide undeveloped right-of-way of Warner Avenue located northwest of the first stage of the Estates of Canyon Crest. The area is south of and adjacent to property owned by Canyon Crest Estates, LLC, on which the second stage of the development is to take place. Mr. Dallas Howard owns the property to the south of the requested vacation area. Let me show some overheads here. and I'll get you a little bit oriented. First of all, this is a pretty large scale drawing that was not included in your packet. This area right here is the Estates at Canyon Crest Phase 1. It's been developed, pretty much sold out. Canyon Crest Estates owns all of this property in this area, and this Phase 2 that they're talking about doing next, we should call it Stage 2, is this area within the dashed line right here within roughly this square. The vacation that we're talking about is a vacation of a right-of-way that goes right along the south line right here. It's the extension of Warner Avenue here. It's a 30-foot section. It comes over to this point right here. So we're only talking from this point over to this point. I'll zero in a little bit more here. I've actually just found out that I can zoom in and out with Elmo, so it's pretty neat. Don't have to squint quite as much. Okay, again, here's the Phase 1 of Canyon Crest. Here's the area that will be developed next. And here's the proposed vacation in red there. Now, the area that Mr. Howard, Dallas Howard, owns is this area down in here. They look like 4 square blocks in here. There's actually 8 orchards blocks in there. Now, I'm glad that Mr. Moore came tonight, because Mr. Moore is a property that we really had not considered much, and he actually did not have a chance to give a consent letter on this, because his property is not actually immediately adjacent to the parcel being vacated. He owns the property down in here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Moore. Yeah. And so I can see where he probably accesses his property across the right-of-way, right up in here into this area. Okay. We can expand on that a little bit later. Now, on the ground out there, this is what it looks like when you're actually on the ground. Now, I'm at the east end of that vacated area, so I'm standing on 18th Street there, looking west, due west. You can see this fence line here, and I've drawn these red lines on here that converge. That is roughly the 30-foot area of public right-of-way that we're talking about vacating tonight. So that's looking toward the west. You can see that there is a developed farm road in here, just a dirt road, just ruts. And it looks like whoever is farming Mr. Dallas's property is actually stretching it on out as far as they can get out here with their wheat. This is a photo looking from the other end. I went to the west end, and now I'm looking back east. So we've got the fence on the other side. Again, here's that. Here is roughly the area of the public right-of-way that is proposed to be vacated. You can see the signs. We had it posted on both ends. You can see that there's really not too much of a road over here. Mr. Moore must not use it on a constant basis.
No, I've never used it.
Oh, okay.
No, it's future use for that property.
For future use, all right, okay. Here's the same sign that we just looked at to give you a perspective looking north. So this fence line's going straight north, and so we're looking at the Lewiston Hill back here. And you can see this flatter area all out in here. This is all the Canyon Crest Estates property. So this immediate area right in here is the Stage 2 properties. 123 lots are proposed to be developed over the next few years in phases here. And then this area out here would be stage 3 as it expands on out. You can see that there is a canyon over here on this side that we've been talking about. It really is an impediment to movement there. Let me go back to this one because I think it's important to get an overall feeling of the properties. So we're out at a large scale here, but you can see all this what looks like purple. Those are contour lines. Those are 10-foot contour lines. So this is a pretty massive canyon that comes down this side. And of course, Lindsay Creek is on this side, so there's a canyon here. So what Canyon Crest Estates is going to improve and work on is their area. They pretty much own this whole ridge top, flat area that goes out, and they plan to develop this whole thing. You can see how Warner Avenue here really would not be feasible. I'm not going to say it couldn't cross the canyon, but it would be an extremely costly and huge project to bring that across. We'll move on with the narrative a little bit, and then we'll talk some more about that. Nature of the request. Mr. Rogers is requesting this vacation to allow him to pursue a better street layout for the estates at Canyon Crest Stage 2. The location of the current Warner Avenue right-of-way would restrict the Stage 2 lot layout to single loading along the street. Single loading of streets along the front and back of the lots is undesirable for the developer and is prohibited in Lewiston City Code Section 3235. That's in the subdivision ordinance where it talks about proper design of subdivisions. If the current Warner Avenue right-of-way is vacated, streets can be dedicated that will allow double loading of lots while maintaining a desirable street and utility layout with good connectivity to adjacent lands. I took the preliminary plat here. I'd like to show you this. Okay, again, to orient you, here's 18th Street on this side. This is the area down here that Mr. Howard owns. This is Stage 2 development. This is all proposed up in here. And actually, Mr. Moore's property would be on the other side of 17th Street over in this area. So you can see that as he develops here, if Warner Avenue here was developed, since this is a property line also, he'd only have lots that could be developed this one direction off this street. And any developer knows that if you have to build a street, you like to be able to put lots both directions off that street. It basically doubles your lots for the cost of building one street. So what Mr. Rogers is proposing to do is to vacate this section of Warner Avenue all the way across, and then develop a street parallel to Warner Avenue right up here. But see how this allows him to do double loading of lots, both sides of the street, all the way along here. Now, you look down here and you say, okay, now what happens on Mr. Howard's property when he develops? Now, if Warner Avenue is gone, that right away, he can do the same pattern. This is by no means restricted to what he has to do. This is just one of many possible layouts. But he can build a street through here and do the same thing and end up with the double loading of lots, which is a very efficient way of developing. I'm not going to bore you with the legal description, because I know how surveyors are received mostly when I start to read bearings and distances. So we'll just skip over that and go to the history. That's always more interesting anyway. This portion of Warner Avenue was dedicated by the Lewiston Orchards Tract Number 12 plat in 1910. Sounds similar to some of our other vacation actions recently. The right-of-way is only 30 feet wide because it was anticipated that the north half of the right-of-way would be dedicated by a future plat. No additional plats were ever done in this area. The area to the south of this portion of Warner Avenue is platted as Block 94, lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. As noted above, Dallas Howard is the current owner of these lots. Let me take you back to 1910. Here's the actual plat of this area. Again, here's 18th over here. This has been developed. Phase 1 of Canyon Crest Estates over here. Here's our section of Warner that we're talking about vacating. And these are the 4 lots right here that Mr. Howard owns, still intact. They're the old 5-acre orchard lots. And these are the only 4 lots that actually are adjacent to the right-of-way to be vacated. Now, if you look at this closely, this area I've got in green are still active right-of-ways. They're undeveloped, but they're still active right-of-ways. So 17th down here is still an active right-of-way. This, what we call an alley street, is actually an extension of Linden across here. This is a 20-foot right-of-way that comes across. It's right in the middle of a farmed field right now, but this is still a valid right-of-way. This has the same status as Warner does up here. So I believe that Mr. Moore will want to look at this pretty closely, because actually this provides access the very same that Warner Avenue does to his property. It's undeveloped, yes. And as I mentioned, 18th is partially developed now because it was a good portion was developed by Mr. Rogers when he did the first phase of Canyon Crest. Discussion. In compliance with the current Lewiston vacation ordinance, Mr. Rogers has submitted the necessary applications and paid the vacation petition fees. He also attempted to get a notarized vacation consent letter from Dallas Howard or Mr. Howard's attorney, but was unsuccessful. Per Idaho State Code 50-1321, a vacation action does not require the consent of an adjoining landowner when such public street or public right-of-way has not been opened or used by the public for a period of 5 years, and when such non-consenting owner or owners have access to his, her, or their property from some other public street, public right-of-way, or private road. However, before such order of vacation can be entered, it must appear to the satisfaction of the public highway agency that the owner or owners of the property abutting said public street or public right-of-way have been served with notice of the proposed abandonment in the same manner and for the same time as is now or may hereafter be provided for the service of the summons in an action at law. In this case, the Warner Avenue right-of-way has not been opened or used by the public for the last 5 years. And Mr. Howard has direct access to the 4 lots he owns by means of the public rights-of-way, 1 improved street and 2 unimproved, that lie to the south, east, and west of the lots. Again, let's look at this quickly. These are the 4 lots we're talking about that are adjacent. And again, you can see that he has a developed street on 18th. He has this Linden Avenue alley here, and then 17th Street on the other side. So he actually has access from public right-of-way to all 4 of these lots as they exist now. They're not developed in these 2 cases. This one is developed. So let's move on. I can see I'm going to have to answer some questions. So, by definition, the city is the public highway agency that the state code speaks of. And on May 22nd, 2014, the city attorney had a notice of intent to vacate served on Mr. Howard's attorney of record, Russell McGuire. The notice gave Mr. Howard and his attorney 20 days to respond, and they did not do so. You had a copy of that notice in your packet if you're interested. As stated by the applicant, the vacation of this portion of Warner Avenue will facilitate the development of both the applicant's and Mr. Howard's properties by allowing streets to be built there that will serve lots on both sides of the streets. The cost of the street and the utility infrastructure can then be spread over more lots, making the development more efficient and economical. The vacation will not prevent the efficient layout of utilities or the establishment of good street connections in the area. Mr. Rogers is designing the southern portion of his Stage 2 development in such a way as to accommodate the efficient development of the Howard land. This accommodation can be seen in the southern extension of proposed Park Ridge Drive and the utility corridor that will eventually connect the public utilities installed in the Canyon Crest development to the future development on the Howard land. Now, let me go back to one of our drawings before. Need to discuss this a little bit. Again, here's our portion of Warner to be vacated. You can see this major street. This is Park Ridge Drive that comes down through, and Mr. Rogers is developing it all the way to his property line. So this street would be available to continue down into the Howard property. This is the utility corridor that I'm speaking of. Now, I put it on here and I put it in your packet before discussions were really complete on this. Now, Mr. Rogers is still discussing this with the city. This corridor here or an easement in this area may or may not happen. We're still in discussion. So I just wanted to let you know that the information in your packet wasn't completely true in this area. If the vacation is approved, Mr. Rogers would prefer that the entire vacated area be conveyed to Mr. Howard. That actually makes sense here, because then this is a section line along here, an important line. If this red area is vacated here, or yellow, whatever that is, and it goes to Mr. Howard, then the true property line along here stays the section line, which is a whole lot less confusing than having a 30-foot offset line. Or in this case, it would be 15 because the adjacent owners would get half of the vacated right-of-way. Mr. Rogers is saying that he would like Mr. Howard to have all of it if you do decide to approve the vacation. One utility line exists in the requested vacation area. The line is a COSD wastewater trunk line that crosses the requested vacation area at a 90-degree angle. There are existing utility easements that cover this pipe, and the requested vacation will not affect those easements. So again, you can see this dash line that comes up through, continues up, and then jogs over like this. That is the COSD trunk line. So that little area right in there is the only place in this section of right-of-way that has a utility on it. And it crosses, and there's already existing utility or existing easements there for that. City staff has solicited comments from utility providers and other departments and agencies, set and advertised a public hearing for the vacation, provided notice of the public hearing by certified mail to all landowners within 300 feet of the requested vacation area, and posted the requested vacation area with public hearing notice signs. The request for comments prompted a no comment response from the Lewiston Community Development Director, Lewiston Transit, the Fire Department, the Police Department, Cable One, the City Street Maintenance Manager, Sunshine Disposal, and the City Stormwater Program Coordinator. No response at all was received from CenturyLink, Avista, COSD, LOID, the City Parks and Recreation Department, the School District, and the Airport Manager. The City Surveyor and the City Water Wastewater Manager both support the proposed vacation, but wanted to make sure that easements are retained for the existing COSD wastewater line. And as I explained, that's not an issue. They are in place already. The City Planner provided comments supporting the vacation. The area of the public right-of-way to be vacated is approximately 0.9 acres, or 9/10 of an acre, with an approximate value of $380, believe it or not, based on Nez Perce County assessed value of the adjacent agricultural land. Recommendations: the staff recommends that the City Council approve the requested Warner Avenue right-of-way vacation and designate that all the vacated right-of-way is to be conveyed to Mr. Dallas Howard. And with that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
Council have any questions? Stick around.
I will.
We may have some.
And I know Mr. Rogers is here,
Yes, I see that.
and I'm not sure who else.
So we've received the staff report. I guess I'll open up the public hearing, and the applicant is here. Mr. Rogers, would you like to come down and say something?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
may I open the back door and see if we get some airflow through here? Thank you.
Sure. That way more people can see us.
Maybe cooler outside.
Helpful. You know, the ones that don't have cable window. AC's off, it's... There's a folding chair right here.
So how many city employees does it take to do a project?
Okay. Now that we're all reconvened, Mr. Rogers, name and address for the record, please.
My name is Mark Rogers. My address is 3815 Southeast Ankeny in Portland, Oregon. Mr. Mayor and council members, thanks for the opportunity to come up and discuss this. I think Dan did a pretty good job of laying out our thoughts in regards to our second stage layout and utilizing or trying to utilize the land to maximize the development and minimize the cost. It certainly made sense when we started to look at this that single-loading Warner Avenue was not cost-effective. We started looking at the vacation opportunity and working our proposal with Pioneer Drive having lots double-loaded, and felt that that same proposal would work well for Mr. Howard. And so we went through, I tried to contact Mr. Howard a number of times and was unsuccessful. Did contact his attorney, had a brief conversation with him right around the first of the year. Finally made application in January, and then went through the process of contacting him, having the city attorney contact him. And so I think and I believe that there are a number of opportunities for Mr. Howard at the time that he decides, or if he does decide to develop his property, that there will be east-west connectivity. As Dan pointed out, it's Pioneer or Park Ridge Drive will more than likely be required to be an improved roadway because it is a COSD trunk line coming through there, and there are sewer manholes there. So that would give connectivity north-south as well. So I'm open to any questions anybody has. It's pretty straight ahead.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Rogers? Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anybody that wishes to speak in favor of this application? Or opposed? Mr. Moore? Certainly. This is the public hearing. Put your name and address for the record again, please.
Thanks for the second opportunity. My name again is Steve Moore, 3404 17th Street in the Orchards. And looks like it was the last one. Turn on off button on this. Oh,
It's on.
There. Okay. The issue I have is this is a 30-foot wide street access. This is a 20, and to my knowledge, alleys are alleys, and they don't encourage development off of those. It's only a 20-foot wide street to come down here and put in 20 lots on that acreage there would put a lot of loading on that narrow road. The other option is come down here to Bryden where it comes across, but as you're aware, this is quite a canyon. It comes up this direction as the main part of the canyon, and that shows it right up at the edge. But if you get one that's a better fit, that comes off of there down lower, and or at least the maps that I've got show it as coming off of there lower. I've never had that part of it surveyed. But anyway, it comes down in the canyon, you've got to come back out of the canyon to get up into the property. And that really restricts the accessibility. One of the things I take exception to is that this part of the road is not vacated. If this goes, this isn't developed. I don't have. I've got access here, but I have access at the mercy of Mr. Howard, because the road that I'm coming in on is actually right on the edge of this, and it's on his property. It's up off of mine, so I can access my field this way, but doing so is on Mr. Howard's property. It's not on the 18th Street right away, or 17th Street right away. So if you vacate that, you've really reduced my options if I ever go to develop that piece of property in the back. Because, as I said, that's a 20-foot easement. I don't think the city's going to be in favor of me putting in lots and taking it off of a 20-foot easement. This is plenty wide enough, but it's much more difficult to access the property that I'd be developing to come this way, as opposed to the easement across the top where it's all flat ground. I think that about wraps it up. The way the lots are laid out, if Mr. Howard, if he builds stuff in here, I could tie off of his property, but I'm at the mercy of Mr. Howard to be allowed to do that, because I would assume when he gets in here to develop his property, they're going to be asking to vacate these other roads as well, so that they can maximize their property, just as Canyon Crest or the states have done. So anyway, that's my concern, is I don't want to be left high and dry access to that piece of property, because because of that canyon, it is quite separate from the rest of my property that I do have access to. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, let's see if we have more testimony. Anybody else wishes to speak in opposition? Okay, well, seeing none, I guess we'll go ahead and we will close the public hearing, but Mr. Rogers, you have the right for rebuttal.
Mr. Mayor, his rebuttal is part of the public hearing.
What's that?
His rebuttal is part of the public hearing.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Oh, good. Smarter than the machine. So, in commenting, I'm going to put up our proposed second stage, and if you can see here, this is alley that we have proposed between Pioneer Drive and Appaloosa Way. We actually have two different alley areas. My comment would be that more than likely, if Mr. Howard was to develop this property, he would double load in here somewhere and utilize this right-of-way, which would allow access to Mr. Moore's land. It would make no sense for him. Well, he would double load it and could figure that out, I would assume, at some point there. There also is, if there was going to be any east-west connectivity, there's Imnaha Lane as well. There's Clearview Point, and there's also Grand Round Court that could provide east-west connectivity as well out of Phase 1. And again, with the trunk sewer line going through, it's going to provide north-south access as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could suggest that you have Mr. Harryhurst clarify that right away on 17th Street.
Please, well, I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
So shall I close now and have discussion? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Harris, front and center, please. That was going to be one of my questions, too. In fact, I happen to know where Mr. Moore lives. That 17th Street access down there, and then what we have on this particular slide, that looks to me like a 30-foot dedicated right-of-way heading to the north. 17th Street.
17th Street is actually a 50-foot dedicated
50 foot.
right-of-way. Yeah, because it was dedicated on both sides by the Orchards Plats. 18th Street is a 60. 17th Street is a 50-foot public right-of-way. Of course, the alley that we're talking about in the middle here is 20. That's true. And then, as I said earlier in my presentation, the 30-foot right-of-way up here for Warner, it was what they really did was they dedicated the 30 feet on the south here, thinking that this area up here would eventually be platted by the Orchards tracks, and that they would plat that other, or dedicate the other 30 feet there. So it was intended to be a 60-foot eventually, but that never happened. So I think the point is that we need to look at closely is that, yes, 17th is a 50-foot right-of-way through here, and I take Mr. Moore's point that this little section down right through here may be fairly steep. And I can't say that I have been there to actually evaluate what could be built there. I know that well, I'm not going to say. I suspect that it could be built, much more feasible than building across the canyon up here, obviously. But the other point is this 20-foot Linden Avenue section here. 20-foot right-of-ways are not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. But we have miles and miles of them up in the orchards. So they can be developed and be effective streets, right-of-ways, as long as you don't have a lot of development on the other end of them. So I would say that this 20-foot right-of-way through the middle here accesses Mr. Moore's property. This would be sufficient for small to moderate-sized development over here.
Okay,
Do you have any other?
Speaking as somebody that lives on Vista Avenue, which is a 20-foot right-of-way in the orchards, it gets plenty of traffic. I mean, it does serve us.
Yeah. And like
It's
I
also
said,
one of those streets that's about a 53% rating. I wouldn't mind if it went down, maybe slow people down a little bit. But, okay, that was going to be my next question, so that the 20-foot right-of-way would still afford Mr. Moore the ability to access that and develop that property.
it's still active,
I mean, not
public
maybe
right-of-way.
a gigantic hotel, but a
Yeah, you wouldn't want to put.
subdivision.
I have no idea about, how many trips you'd want to put on that every
Okay.
day. But for a small to medium-sized subdivision out there, I don't believe there'd be a problem with that.
Okay. Councilor Blakey.
May I ask a question that may be outside of your expertise? Warner Avenue, if it was extended from 16th east, there's a canyon in there or a dip or something, or at least a dip. Is it engineerily feasible to build Warner all the way? Would it be possible or not?
It is feasible, but let me just do a real quick count here on these 10-foot contours, and I'll tell you what kind of fill would be required. 1, 2, 3.
You hear that?
I'm getting 12 10-foot contours, so 120 feet deep is the canyon. So you could build across, but it would be a huge fill. Normally, that type of development is not undertaken. Feasibly, yes, you could do it. If you had enough money and the inclination to do it, some reason to do it, you could do that.
Thank you.
I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of a comparable fill in the city of Lewiston.
Yeah, maybe at the bottom of Vineyard where it ties into the Grapevine. That might be coming close. South of Guardian Angel.
Possibly, yeah,
where
possibly.
Where we have a project pending.
Yeah. You know, not too
That's
long
still
ago.
a big fill, though.
Not too long ago, we looked at Vineyard Drive near Mr. Bloom's apartments, and there's a large canyon that was filled in there, but it was only 50 to 60 feet in there. So this, we're talking twice that much for this one.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, so you said you hadn't visited Mr. Moore's property. In your opinion, would this impact his access at all, or?
From what he said, it wouldn't impact his access as he uses it now, because he hasn't used this. I did notice that road, you know, the farm road across the top in the 30-foot Warner Avenue area that is being considered for vacation. There was a farm road there. I guess I would say, I mean, I would have to say yes, it would have an impact on his access to his property if you allow a vacation on this. But there are alternative access points to it. You know,
Councilor Blakey.
I have some general comments. Maybe, are we going to have another comment, a counselor session, comment session on this, or is this the appropriate time just to say
This is the appropriate time.
To say what's on your mind?
We're going to vote.
Oh, thank you. A couple things. There seems to be some similarities here to the very first council meeting I ever had to sit through, where we were being asked to close an alleyway for somebody, and the staff recommended it, and up pops somebody who testified and says, wait a minute, you're taking away my only legitimate access to my backyard. And after observation and a question I asked was, how come that question wasn't asked? It came up through discussion that that's not a question that you ask when you go through this process. And something close to that, close to the explanation, it's not a question that you ask, will someone lose access? You don't have to ask that. And so somewhere I see a gentleman who, the only person who seems to be using his property right now is this. My other observation is the other access points, if he was to use that alleyway cutting across the farm field today, someone's crop is going to get ruined.
That's a chance you take building in the right of way.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying who's ever farming that is not going to be happy, and we're going to hear from them as soon as he drives his truck across that right of way. And there's going to be some issues there. We'll hear about that. And the fact that I know that Mr. Howard hasn't responded to anything, and this may be outside the mirror of all this, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's back taxes even owed on this property. Not that it's relevant or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. This is one of the properties that we potentially could be auctioning off if the taxes aren't paid in a relatively solid period of time. My last comment is this. Several weeks ago in a URA meeting, Mr. Hasenrahl, again, gave this presentation in the 2000 road survey. And he put up an interesting map. And I thought two aspects of it were fascinating. He showed a road that extended from 16th, the intersection of Warner and 16th, where the Fish and Game is. He showed an extension that looped all the way around and would come in just about where we are proposing Nez Perce Drive would come into, where if we were to punch Nez Perce Drive into Gun Club, at some time the city had done at least a conceptual proposal that the possibility of extending 16th all the way around and joining those roads up. So I see that's kind of interesting, that there's another route of taking traffic off of some of our roads and redirecting and also opening up for future development. So I know I'm hearing you saying it's going to cost an arm and a leg to do the big dig. But at the same time, that's a huge development out there, and I can see the developer wants to make it bigger, and there are limited access points to that development. As it stands now, you got one good road, and then you have a dirt road coming in up from Lindsay Creek, a backdoor exit. There is no other exits to that development. I could foresee where down the road, we may want to use Warner as an access point to that property. So I don't know if we want to be so quick to condemn it just yet. or any aspects of it, I'm advocating that we may want to take our time and sit back and leave this road intact. Because I don't know if there's a sense of urgency to do this. I don't know if these lots are going to go up for sale next week or not. But if there's a sense of urgency, I don't sense there's a sense of urgency. I'd hate to lose some options for further development and further connectivity to that project, or that area. Because again, emergency exits, if there was ever an emergency to get in and out of there, I think we need to someday be looking at future access points to that development.
Can I say some things?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay.
Certainly.
Thank you. I have seen an extension of 16th Street, I believe, that you're talking about, and it actually went to the north and curved around and connected into Lindsay Creek Road. I've never seen anything that extended across on Warner Avenue through there. Now, I may not have seen, obviously, I've only been with the city for 7 years, so I'm sure there's a lot that I haven't seen, but I've never seen that that particular connection.
He was explicit in showing it coming right into where we would be talking of Nez Perce Drive connecting with Gun Club. He was explicit in showing that.
Okay.
That's also all county land. That's from the MPO. The MPO's 40-year master plan.
One of the other points I wanted to make is there actually is a sense of urgency, and maybe I can let Mr. Rogers speak to that more effectively than I can. But he is moving ahead with this, trying to get this preliminary plat done. And this has a direct impact on his preliminary plat on what he has to do along Warner here. If Warner's not vacated, then we have to somehow account for that. Change designs, do some things that at this point would not be pretty. They're obviously doable, but not pretty. So there is urgency.
Yes.
From the developer's standpoint, not the city's standpoint. So let me clarify that. That's why Mr. Rogers might want to clarify. 17th Street, it does extend on to the south. There are multiple problems with the topography there, but eventually we are looking at some kind of connection down there. It may very well be that Bryden Avenue will be built all the way across to the west side of this mesa type structure we're talking about, and then that would go to the north and connect, utilizing 17th Street. So there are a few other connections. It's not always going to be just 18th and that 18th Street extended down to Lindsay Creek as the only two options.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Blakey.
Is there some process that we could reopen public comment to allow this citizen to make her comments? Is there a way that we could do that?
I was going to ask the same thing.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you can reopen the public hearing if you wish, but you have to give the applicant an opportunity to respond.
That's fine. Okay. Ma'am, would you like to come down and speak?
Thank you, yes. I'm Donna Malcolm. I live on Imnaha Lane, and I'm in the area that you're speaking of. I don't see why on land on the west side of 18th Street couldn't be developed before another one was, because there's nothing there but field. Any comment?
That's where the development is proposed, ma'am, is to the west of 18th Street.
Yes, that's what I'm proposing is is that land ever going to be used? Right now, it's just field. I don't see why they have to build clear over down to Warner Avenue.
Ma'am, are you referring to the piece of property that Dallas Howard currently owns?
I have no idea who owns it.
And we're talking about the right-of-way across the middle of it?
I am talking about the land west on Canyon Crest area.
Okay. Well, ma'am, I appreciate your comments. That's not the area that's we're discussing tonight.
Yeah, that's what it is.
But thank you. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
When we entered into or started looking at the vacation process, we didn't do it lightly. We looked at the topography, and from both the 16th side and the 18th side of making an improvement across that gully. And I'm not an engineer, and I don't know how much fill it would take, but it would be a mammoth project. I would personally, if it was on the table, appreciate it because it would be a great connector into Canyon Crest Estates. And if I thought that that was something that would happen, I would not oppose, or I would pull my vacation immediately. But I do believe that the infrastructure costs to do that are prohibitive for who it would serve, because it would really serve nobody more than Canyon Crest Estates. It would tee into 18th Street. There's no way that it would develop down to Lindsay Creek. So your access really would be teed at 18th Street at that point in time. I appreciate Mr. Moore's concerns. However, city staff has looked at this since January, and the alley access per Dan is adequate to service his land. And I can appreciate the fact that there's a crop there, but we are under a fair amount of time constraints to move this thing forward. And if we can move ahead with our plat, we'll be putting people to work to start to develop jobs. There's a lack of new single-family lots out there. So I think that there is a timing issue here for us, that if we have to go back and redo this plat, it pushes us back. And so I'm happy to answer any questions, if anybody has any.
Questions from Mr. Rogers? Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay.
I assume I get an opportunity to review?
No.
I don't?
No. The applicant has that privilege. Okay. Well, we've held the public hearing. Councilors, I guess I'd entertain a motion on either side. Let's entertain a motion to approve the vacation VA 06-2014.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Councilor Daniel.
I too. This does remind me of one of the first few meetings we had this year with the alleyway, where I came into the public hearing with just the information I currently had, and there was a citizen that stood up and informed us of how it impact them, and I think this reminds me of that, and I'll be voting no.
Okay. Other comments? I appreciate Mr. Moore's situation, but, I don't know, I don't think this falls underneath that same vacation in that alleyway. There were several houses that we had more than one person come up and testify. I live on a 20-foot street in the Orchards. I've lived there for 25 years. You know, it's a narrow, dinky little street. I watched my dog get run over on it. I wish the street was in a little poorer condition. Maybe it'd slow people down. But that's what we have. And it services a lot of houses. And I don't see why that can't be developed just like basically we've got a farm road double rutted along the Warner Avenue right away right now. It'd be very easy to move that to the Linden right away. Would it make somebody mad? Yeah, if somebody wanted to drive across there right now, I suppose it would. But that's, I think that's the risk you take when you go plant crops in a dedicated right-of-way. You know, something's going to happen. The 17th Street may be a little bit of a challenge, but with a 50-foot right-of-way heading to the north, and that has been on the MPO's plan for a while. Not that they've acted on it or anything. The same thing with the Bryden Avenue east-west. I don't think that if we approve this, that it would really preclude Mr. Moore from developing his northern piece of his property. That's my opinion, so.
Mr. Mayor, I think from the testimony that I've heard today that it will negatively impact access to Mr. Moore's property, so I'll be voting no.
Okay. Further comments? Thoughts? Okay, all those in favor of the proposed vacation of Warner Avenue, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion fails 4-3. Did you get the head count? Aye.
Nay was Councilor Blickey. Thank you. 04?
Yes. Motion failed. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Mr. Rogers, I suppose you'll be in touch with Mr. Hayhurst. Okay. Moving on, next public hearing, zone change, ZCO 3-14, the applicants Judd and Best LLP, request to rezone a .52 acre lot in the R1 Suburban Residential Zoning District to C3 Community Commercial Zoning District. This would be a northerly extension to their facilities at 3729 14th Street.
Mr. Mayor. For the record, I'll be abstaining from discussion on this due to the proximity to my house.
Okay, well, and if that's your choice, that's fine, but Ms. Shropshire, Councilor Daniel doesn't believe he received a notice, but he lives fairly close, so he's not comfortable participating in the debate.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I indicated to Councilor Dunn, there's no statutory requirement that he recuse himself, but he is what is referred to as an affected person because he lives within the 300 feet.
Oh, he is within
notification.
300.
I think I might be. I'm not sure, so
Okay.
I'm going to err on the side of caution.
From what he described to me, he was.
I think I'm pretty close, so I'm just going to err on the side of caution.
That's fine.
So.
Thank you.
Affected person.
Next item, Mr. Mayor.
We're calling the public meeting to order.
There we go. I believe Ms. Gilbert will be ready to go and make that presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So we're talking about or reviewing the zone change 03-14 for Judd and Best LLP. And the owners are in the audience for any questions. The applicant is requesting a rezone of a .52 acre lot in a R1 Suburban Residential Zoning District to a C3 Community Commercial Zoning District to provide storage for their existing lumber yard. This allows the business to expand its lumber products to support customer needs in the community. The property is located in the Central Orchard neighborhood number 6 of the plan and is designated as commercial in the desired future land use map. Ooh, that didn't work very well. You can't really see this very well, but it's basically around here. Staff has reviewed the application and the area with the following findings. The surrounding land use is R1 or community commercial. North is R1 suburban residential zone, and to the west and south is zoned R1, and to the east zoned C3 community commercial. This request meets the purpose of a Z3 community commercial zone to provide for development of commercial and service uses designed to serve community-wide needs. Such areas shall provide for uses which, because of size, operating characteristics, or need for major street accessibility, may not be suitable in the central business district or local commercial areas. The provision of this zone shall ensure compatibility of design with any adjacent residential development. Lewiston will benefit by providing additional building material resources for those wishing to remodel or build. The existing commercially zoned property, of which the subject property will become a part of, has historically been used by owners who have run building material businesses from this location. This is a good location for residents in the central Orchard Neighbourhood 6 to gain access to building and lumber materials. The subject property is located on two minor arterial roads, 14th Street and Ripon Avenue, although access is via 14th Street, which connects to Thane Road, a minor collector street, which then connects to 21st Street, classified as a minor arterial road. This road is not at standard required. This road is not at the standard required by City Code. The subject property, being zoned commercial, will provide more storage area for lumber inventory to the business while keeping the property location compatible with the surrounding area, supporting business growth. Staff reviewed the conditions and believe the parcel of land can support the desired use without impacting the residential neighbourhoods. Under the current zoning, the property owner cannot use the land for commercial use, which is intent to help serve the local community's building material needs. Engineering and the city surveyor and the fire department have supported the zone change, but have provided comments regarding the development of the land and its use. One letter of support was received from Mr. and Mrs. Schaefer of 1311 Ripon Avenue. And I'm just going to go through some visuals for you so that you can get a sense of the area. So the parcel of land that we're talking about is a northern extension to their property, which is this area here that is sort of greyed out. This is a view of the zoning area, and I'm not quite sure why this is looking like it is, but it's not very clear, I'm afraid, sorry. This is a northerly view, and as you can see here, we have the notice with regards to the zone change. The actual, this is the property that we are looking to rezone here, or that you're reviewing, and the existing property is to the west here. This is just looking south. I'm sorry that this is not very clear. I'm not quite sure how we can make this any clearer. But this is 14th Street, this is on the curve, and then Ripon Avenue is to the south here. As you can see, there's no curb or gutter, sidewalks. This is a westerly view, looking out from the property. This is a northerly view, and it shows 14th Street here. Additional customer parking along here, although really there's ample parking along the side of the building and property line here. The reason I showed this view was just to show the landscaping that they've got and how they've already got their parking situated. This is north of the main building and the outdoor existing lumber yard that they have. And on the just on the other side here is the additional property that we're looking to review the zone change. I wanted just to show the truck entrance off of 14th Street. And as you can see, they've got a nice wide entrance here off of 14th Street. And there's lots of signage up here and lots of clearance for the trucks to come in. Situated on the actual property is signage up for when the trucks come in for unloading, so it's all nicely spaced out for trucks to come in. This is an easterly view that just shows behind the main building the trucks are lined up for when they're either loading or unloading. This is a south view, so the trucks come in from down this side, this entrance down here, and then they would go round the main building, load up or unload, and then exit. There's an exit here onto 14th Street. And again, a wide opening there too, and clearance from that corner there. So the action required today from the City Council is to review the findings and staff report, and if you feel that this is something that you can approve tonight. The applicant has requested a suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings and then read by title only. The applicant has asked to proceed like this for the permitting because it's going to take some time to do the permitting and the on-site land changes to adhere to stormwater, fire and land use code. Do you have any questions?
Council have any questions? Thank you, Jackie. We'll go ahead and open this public hearing. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Would you like to come down and say something?
Hello, my name is Sharon Judd. I live at 3303 15th Street, and my husband and I have JJ Building Supplies, which would be the occupant for this property. Again, we're just an elderly neighbor came to us when we first bought the property that we're situated at, and said that she's a recent widow, wanted to sell this property so that she would be able to stay in her home. And so to that end, we purchased this property and would like the opportunity to utilize it to expand our lumberyard for additional outside storage and employee parking. Thank you for your consideration.
Question?
Question actually for City Attorney. I just realized my son was a former employee of JJ Building, a short-term employee in Moscow. Would that tint me in any way? Should I exempt myself from voting? It just dawned on me that he is a short-term employee there.
Is he an employee now?
No.
How long ago was he an employee?
Year ago, maybe a year, a little longer.
I would guess it probably, unless you feel that it would have some impact on your ability to be fair in this decision. I can't see something that long
No,
ago.
I just wanted to make sure it didn't come back to bite me.
Okay. Is there anybody that wishes to speak in favor of the application? Name and address for the record, please.
I'm Patrick Laney Jr., address 3719 14th Street. And I just want to say I'm in favor of this. Since Mr. and Mrs. Judd have bought the area, they have improved it greatly. It looks better. And I live right across the street from the widow that they were speaking of. And I think it's great what they're doing. And I'm in favor of it. So that's all I really had to say.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Anybody else wishing to speak in favor? Anybody in opposition? Okay, seeing none. Guess there's no point in rebuttal.
I have a question.
You're going to be bringing somebody up, or?
No.
Okay. At this time, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And Councilor Randall.
On the lumber storage, is that going to transfer the lumber storage from the curved area back to that area?
I'm not sure if we're going to talk about moving down. We're recording this, so she needs to come down where we can hear her.
Okay. Could you come down, ma'am? Yeah.
There is actually city code with regards to the barrier between commercial and residential that would need to be adhered to, just so that you are aware.
Name and address again. Sharon
No,
Judd.
You're fine.
Okay.
You're already on the record.
Okay. I just wanted, we have not done a complete layout because we're still waiting to hear back from the city on what they're going to require as far as infrastructure changes. And so that will impact how we arrange things. But currently it is up high on that curve, and we would prefer to have it down there kind of tucked in that lower area. Fire will only let us go 12 feet high, and so we think for visual it would be better to be back in that area, that lower area that we're looking at rezoning.
You're probably not going to be stacking lumber in a drainage swale either.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you. Okay, councilors, close the public hearing. I guess I'll entertain a motion to approve zone change ZC 03-14.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the rezone and the ordinance under suspension of the rules.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, please remember that this is a land use decision that requires you make specific findings regarding why you're moving to approve it.
Because we're accepting the Planning and Zoning Commission's findings of fact and conclusions of law.
You can accept the Planning and Zoning Commission's findings of fact, and you can base it upon the information that you have before you or what you've heard at the public hearing. But specifically, you need to make some findings about whether or not it complies with it's consistent with the comprehensive plan and is not detrimental to the neighborhood or is detrimental to the neighborhood, depending on how you vote.
Okay. Can we just, can we just accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law from the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yeah, they're now by law.
I can't make a motion, so.
No, they're now by law referred to as reasoned statements, and those are the two or three things that you really need to make some comment on, is that it's consistent with what's in the neighborhood, not detrimental to the neighborhood, that it's consistent with
Shall I read
the
these
comprehensive plan, and if it's those particular items should be addressed in the.
Shall I read these into the public record? Since I have them right here.
Or you can simply note that they're noted in the findings of fact.
Just so council knows, on page 2, from the reasoned statement before the Planning and Zoning Commission in the city of Lewiston, in respects to the said public hearing, the conclusions of law are listed. If everybody's in agreement with those. Okay. So now can we vote? Thank you. Okay, do we have any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the zone changes, ECO 3-14, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
6-0.
Oh, thank you. 6-0 with Councilor Daniel abstaining due to his proximity. Okay. Should we take a 4 or 5 minute break? So people can air out. Okay. We'll adjourn for 5 minutes.
I'm all in favor.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Appreciate the little break. It's been a little warm in here. They had a AC issue apparently here at the library, so. We'll continue with our consent agenda. Councilor Blakey?
Yes. Motion?
Motion to reconsider.
I'd like to propose a motion to reconsider our vote on the waiving or the of Mr. Moore's and Mr. Rogers' issue about the land, and that we reconsider that vote to the next. I'm not phrasing it right, but we reconsider that to the next meeting. It's been brought to my attention that Mr. Moore was coming up to comment when we said he couldn't comment. He was coming up to say that he was dropping his opposition to the vacation and was willing to work with us for other approaches to his property. And he was willing to make that compromise, but we didn't give him, through procedurally, we did not allow him a chance to say that. And
Okay.
so I think it would be appropriate for to bring it back to the table on the next meeting and allow both parties again to say that, to air that out. I believe we will have a compromise there that we all might live with.
Do we,
I second the motion
okay,
or I second the motion to reconsider.
Yeah.
okay. So we've got a motion and a second. Would this
You
have to
can,
be
you don't have
taken
to
up on
delay
the-
it. You can consider it right now.
Would it be, well, Mr. Moore's left the building and Mr. Rogers has left the building. I don't think that's appropriate either. But
Then
do we
you
have
should
to,
wait and do a motion to reconsider at your next.
at the
meeting.
work session
Your next regular meeting, which is the work session
on the
of
7th?
July 7th.
So that we could have it back in front of us on the 14th?
No. No, you did. The motion to reconsider brings the item back up on the agenda, and you vote on it again at that point. So if, you're not
Counsel?
really making a motion to reconsider on another agenda today. That's not really the appropriate motion. What you should do is, if you want to wait until then, simply make your motion to reconsider at the July 7th work session, because the motion to reconsider is not tableable, so it's just inappropriate.
Okay.
Unless you want to vote on it now.
Councilor Daniel?
I guess it doesn't matter, but we could do a motion to reconsider, and then that, if the motion to reconsider passes, it's before us, and at that point, we could table to the next meeting, but either way is correct. Because as soon as it's before us, we could.
Yeah, that's a little convoluted, and I'm not sure in Robert's Rules of Order that you can do that. But you can vote on it. If you want to continue with your motion to reconsider, you can vote to reconsider the item now on this agenda. Or if you want input on it from Mr. Moore or anybody else, then I would suggest that you bring that motion up at the July
The
7th
next
meeting.
meeting.
I would prefer to actually hear this from Mr. Moore's mouth, not how I did hear it, but the source was reliable that he was coming up. And point of order, I will not be at the July 7th meeting, so somebody else would have to bring that up to the table.
I'll make the motion at the next one, but we still have the motion on the table, so are you withdrawing your motion, or at this point?
That's what I would suggest.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I
And the
would,
second withdraws.
okay. Okay, so I guess we'll be discussing this July 7th. Thank you. Okay, next up, consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to read the consent agenda as amended.
So moved. Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
I'm sorry, you said as amended. Was there a change to the?
Well, we just had an
Oh,
update
okay.
today,
Perfect, thank you.
and there's first and second readings.
Approving the minutes of the June 9th, 2014 budget work session. Accepting the minutes of the May 28th, 2014 Planning and Zoning Commission. Approving Resolution 2014-43 by title only. A resolution implementing the decision of the City Council of the City of Lewiston, Idaho in VA 05-2014, vacating a portion of the right-of-way in the cul-de-sac at the east end of 23rd Avenue, as shown on the Snake River View Edition No. 1 plat, and providing an effective date. Approving the first reading of Ordinance 4608 by title only. An ordinance implementing the City Council's decision in ZC 0214, declaring that certain real property be removed from the low-density residential zone, R2A, and included in the planned unit development zone, PUD, amending the official zoning map of the City of Lewiston and providing an effective date. Approving the second reading of Ordinance 4608 by title only. An ordinance implementing the City Council's decision in ZC 0214, declaring that certain real property be removed from the low-density residential zone, R2A, and included in the planned unit development zone, PUD, amending the official zoning map of the City of Lewiston and providing an effective date. Retaining the services of a qualified real estate firm to assist with the sale of the Sementicum Library. And approving the vouchers payable for May 23rd, 2014 through June 5th, 2014 in the amount of $738,990.51.
Okay, councilors, the consent agenda has been read. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. On to the active agenda. Ordinance 4608, third reading and adoption. I'll entertain a motion to read Ordinance 4608 for the third time.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to table the second reading until the next full council meeting. Reason being is, I don't think we've actually received the full plan as modified. We're constantly getting a new plan every time we turn around. And so I'm saying that...
This is the third reading of 4608 we're on.
This is 4608.
Oh, 4608, I'm sorry.
This is the zone change.
Okay, sorry.
PUD.
I was on 4607.
Okay. So.
Excuse me.
He was jumping ahead.
You showed your cards, though, in poker.
He was jumping ahead a little. Okay, so, do we have a motion to read ordinance 4608 for the third time?
I move.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you also have in your packet a reasoned statement, which by law you're required to adopt if it in fact is consistent with your findings from the public hearing in this matter.
If I may, we had a public hearing and we did approve the request using the Planning and Zoning Commission's findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Not on zone changes. We don't do findings on zone changes at the Planning Commission level.
Okay.
We only do them at the council level. In terms of an actual written statement, they do make a recommendation to you.
Okay.
The reason statement you will notice is goes through some of those things that I was talking about earlier in terms of compliance with the comprehensive plan, impact on the neighborhood, and that sort of thing. So the law passed about a year ago to change that from findings of fact to reasoned statements. Requires that you actually make findings pursuant to a reasoned statement that includes those things that are listed.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Daniel.
Councilor Maldonado or Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, was your intent of the motion and the second that of the, is it consistent? Did you make the motion because the issue before us is consistent with the reason statement?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Is that fair enough?
You actually have to adopt the reasoned statement. It's not that the ordinance is consistent with it, but that you have to adopt the reasoned statement. Because if this were to go to court, the court doesn't look at the ordinance, the court looks at the reasoned statement. So those are the findings that you make.
So can I move that we adopt the reasoned statement?
That'd be great.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Is there a discussion? We're still on the first reading, by the way. Or the reading.
You've already
We're supposed to read.
adopted the ordinance for the third reading.
Correct. And she's supposed to read it, and then we have to vote on it.
You don't have to read the reasoned statement, you just have to adopt it.
Okay.
We don't have a roll call on the third reading yet.
Sorry? I jumped ahead of that.
So he is making a motion to read based on accepting the reason statement from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Is that correct?
You have two things you need to do. One is to adopt the ordinance, and the second is to adopt the reason statement. And then in the past, those have not been, they've just sort of been put together, and the reason statement was signed by the mayor after the hearing, or after the adoption of the ordinance. But now specifically, you have to adopt the reason statement, so that's kind of where we're at.
Okay, which I...
But you need a roll call vote on the third reading of the ordinance.
Okay.
Apparently, the clerk would like me, because it's required by law.
Which is fine, which I think we have on the table right now. Am I correct on that? That's what's on the table? Okay. So, all those in favor of reading ordinance 4608 for the third time, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Approving the third reading of ordinance 4608 by title only, suspending the rules. An ordinance implementing the City Council's decision in ZC 0214, declaring that certain real property be removed from the low-density residential zone R2A and included in the planned unit development zone PUD, amending the official zoning map of the City of Lewiston and providing an effective date.
Okay, councilors. Ordinance 4608 has been read for the third time. I'll entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 4608.
So moved.
Second. A motion and a second. Is there discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Are we good now?
We have to do the
I
reason
apologize. You have to have a roll call on the reason statement as well.
Okay. Councilors, I'll entertain a motion to accept the reason statement provided by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, now we're good. Moving right along. Next on the active agenda is ordinance 4607, second reading, amending the urban renewal plan for the North Lewiston tax revenue allocation area, Nez Perce Terrace tax revenue allocation area, and the downtown Lewiston tax revenue allocation area. I'll entertain a motion to read for the second time ordinance 4607.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Randall.
Now I'll make the motion to table this until the next full meeting of council, because we're receiving a modified version of the plan, and hopefully it'll be the final version of the plan, and that will give the public a chance to make comment.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand the motion? I guess I would offer, this is only the second reading, and I think staff was planning on having the big presentation so we could finally wrap this up at July 14th, but we have a motion and a second. Entertain discussion. Councilor Blakey.
It's my belief that we should defeat this motion and continue to go ahead with the vote. And I would encourage you to vote yay, because we have plenty of opportunity at the third reading if we choose to want to table at that point in time. I'm correct? We could table the third reading if we wanted to do further study. And I think that gives us an opportunity to, on July 14th, if for some reason this council at that time deems it necessary to table it because further study needs to be done, I think that would be an opportune time then to table it if we chose to vote that way. But in the meantime, though, I believe URA has made a very good faith call here in today's meeting to decide that we will have final documents in front of you by July 14th with what our recommendation is. And there'll be opportunity to discuss it. And at that point in time, if we'd like to table it for further, that would be, I think, the more appropriate time.
Okay. Councilor Daniel?
I gotta agree with Councilor Randall. At this point, we should have all the information. There shouldn't be this constant changing of information, this constant changing of what project is gonna happen and what project isn't. We should have that in front of us now, since we're already halfway through approving it.
Okay. Other comments? Councilor Maldonado.
The URA really didn't have that much time to get all these projects to us. I mean, we gave them the timetable until May to get everything together, and it's been quite a tight turnaround for them to come and have everything, whittled down to the 4 projects they want to do. So I think we move forward with it, and we have the chance at the third reading to table it at that point.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Pro Tem Johnson.
I agree with Councilor Daniel and Councilor Randall. I think we need to delay this. There's way too many projects on the table, way too many numbers, way too many pages of information, voluminous information, and it's not just about a good faith effort. It's about allowing the citizens to have a chance to digest the information and respond to it accordingly.
Okay. Well, I don't have any problem with the second reading. We have gotten a bunch of information. Some of it was redundant, some of it was new. I did spend a fair amount of time looking over it. Again, some of it's been reiterated. I think they've done some weeding out of certain things, if you will, and or whittling away, as the vernacular is. And yes, they'll have their the SurveyMonkey information for the rankings finished up by the next one. Then we can hash it out then. I mean, obviously it'll be well publicized and people can come and talk, but I guess it's up to the council's pleasure as to whether we want to do it at the next meeting or delay it for one more meeting and then have another reading in end of July. I will remind council that we're starting to get into the tax season too, so this is not the be-all and end-all. I mean, by adopting, and just by adoption of this, I don't think is necessarily going to make us take every one of these projects. I mean, I don't see that happening. So, Ms. Von Tersch, do you have something to add?
I do. I would just like to make the council aware of the noticing requirements for a URA plan amendment adoption process. And they're a little different than the normal noticing processes from the standpoint of you can't take action, you have to give your notice and you can't take any action before 30 days has elapsed. But then you have to take action before 60 days has elapsed. So all the big newspaper ads we did, the hand delivery of documents to all the taxing entities, the 60 days, okay, that was published on May 25th. The 60 days is up July 21st. So if you table the second reading and you have second reading on July 14th, you could do second and third reading on the 14th if you're so inclined, or you could do third reading on the 21st. But if you don't do either one of those things, we wouldn't be able to have, if this is a public hearing, we wouldn't be able to have that at the end of July. I'd have to start back over with this notice thing, and I guess I wouldn't know if I have to do that until July 14th rolls around, and I know, what the direction is. And then we wouldn't be able to have it back here before the second Monday in August if there's 30 days there, or the fourth Monday in August if there's not 30 days. And then we couldn't do all the readings that night. I don't know where we're going to be in this whole thing, but it's conceivable that you're setting it up for a whole new notice, which is fine. It's absolutely fine. It's just that then we would start back over on first reading, the middle of August, and then we couldn't finalize things until the middle of or end of September. Just so you know.
Thank you. Councilor Daniel.
Laura? Was the notice for the hearing, or was it for the first reading?
The notice for the hearing is only 15 days. It's the third reading of the ordinance that becomes important in this notice.
So I guess I'm trying to understand, why would we put out notices on a plan that's not completely done yet if we don't have the information? How would you put a notice out to the public if they don't even have the opportunity to review the information?
Okay, I guess I have to take exception to that because when I have a summary document saying that rebuilding something is $1 million and you ask for more detail and I give you 12 sheets documented how I get to $1 million, that's not new. The only one new project in that whole list is the port was requesting 6th Avenue North for $1 million. If that's hanging it up, throw it out.
So you guys aren't, so URA, I'm sorry, the URA isn't making any modifications, they're not doing any kind of prioritization list, they're not changing
That's
ratings?
different.
No, it's all about the same, it's all related to the same plan.
I don't think that by prioritizing a project that you are materially changing a plan. Getting back to the plan is this policy structure. And this, I'm sorry, I'm off the agenda. I have a lot to say, but this isn't the right time.
Well, I'm not done. Or walk away, that's fine too. We can
Continue.
vote. We can vote, it's fine.
Okay.
I'll have more to say once we get to the reading part.
Okay. Okay, so the motion on the table is to read for the second time 4607.
The motion was tabled.
Oh, the motion was tabled. I'm sorry, that's right. the
Motion was to table.
Thank you. I get sidetracked. So, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Motion fails, 4-3. Okay, so we're back to second reading of ordinance 4607. Entertain a motion.
I'll wait for a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion to read.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion. Counselor Daniel.
If this prioritization was just about a small list of projects that we knew we were going to do, then I could probably go along with that rationale that the prioritization isn't that big of a deal. But right now, there's just a huge laundry list, a wish list of projects that could possibly done if they could come up with funding for it. So at this point, the public doesn't even know for sure what projects are going to get done for sure because there's so many, and I don't think they're all going to get done. And I'm also curious as to why we would be prioritizing as opposed to whittling away. And I'm concerned with if we just leave all of the projects that don't make it to the top tier or the top list, why are we going to leave the lower ones on? And is the reason for leaving those on so the URA essentially never closes until 2029 because there'll always be a project on the books? I would actually like to see a list of what projects we are going to do and not just a huge wish list.
Pro Tem Johnson.
I agree with Councilor Daniel. There's a laundry list of projects here that and millions of dollars, and we're still being given incomplete data. We're being told that we'll have an answer. I feel like we're going to have an answer at the last minute, and it's going to be all the information's going to be sprung on us, and we're not going to have enough time to make a sound decision. So it's unfortunate that the process is being handled this way, and vote no.
Okay. Councilor Blakey.
I'm suffering from information overload. If anything, I would go on to say that URA has provided us with mountains of information. I think the issue here is you're asking, I want you now to sit and tell me tonight what the 3, 4, 5, 1 project is, whatever that number is. And again, it's been reiterated that the July 14th meeting is when that information will be finalized. It may be finalized before that. It's possible that it could be finalized and then could be released, and still have plenty of time. But as far as cost estimates, we've had plenty of cost estimates, plenty of opportunity to research this. If you want to sit there, if we want the ability to cherry pick it, then fire the URA, get rid of them, and let us start to cherry pick it. Last week or last month, a gentleman got up there and accused us of not doing our jobs, and why should we let an organization like URA pick things when it's our job to do it? And I wish I had been thinking on my feet, and I got thinking, you're paid $60,000 a year to do that for the county, and we're compensated a fraction of that. The reason why, and we all have full-time jobs, the reason why we employ committees, URA and committees, is to bring this information to us, and then we make decisions. And by approving this tonight, or even disapproving it, but by approving the reading, we've not made a final decision. We still have an opportunity to table it, and it gives the URA, well, by approving it, it lights a fire under the URA for us to meet our mandate, which we've set for ourselves, to get to that date. And so that's what I think, I believe, that's where we should be going forward.
Mr. Mayor? I think there's a number of ironies here, and generally when you develop a URA plan, it is broad, but yet specific for some vision and completion and success. And that was done on the first plan, and then in some cases it was a year or two or three before projects really were vetted out. I see us in May getting the green light from the council to move forward with that broad plan. It just so happened in one area, and here's another one of the ironies, close or not close, but we've heard from not just the port, but many parties that there are at least 9 projects. That tells me there's a lot of, even if you whittle down to 2, there's many projects that are surfacing. So I think we're really in an exercise that we're drilling down and doing steps that in many cases, many RAs wouldn't even be seen for 6, 10, 12 months down the road. Now that being said, a lot of energy has been spent in the last 6 months defending, do we close or not close? The reality is a lot of energy with the lawsuits. We have a plan, we met the May deadline. I am confident that the URA will, through this, and in fact the port has assisted with that as well. They too, and it was in the paper, have whittled those projects, if you will, down to their top 3. I'm confident that the URA will present no more than 4, but probably 3 projects in a priority for you a week before the 14th so that you can analyze it. The other thing is, due to the true timetables of only 15 years left in this window and the cash flow potential, you couldn't possibly do 6 of them, let alone 9. So just due to the sheer numbers and the time involved, that alone is going to whittle it down. So just thought I'd point out a couple of those things.
Well, thank you, Mr. Marsh. I agree with that. It's, again, I'm fully confident that we will have plenty of time to make those choices, and that, I think, would, at the 3rd reading on the 14th, would be the time and place. And we can sit down and we'll have the list and say, well, that's not a good idea. Maybe that's a good idea, and we can pick it apart, amend the plan. It's our plan. They do report to us, but, from I agree with Councilor Blakey. I mean, you've got different groups working on this. Some obviously have different interests in seeing some of this stuff through, whether it's a private developer or, say the Port District, things like that. We're the city. We're not the port. We are the sole proprietors, if you will, of the URA, and they do serve at our pleasure. And that being said, I am willing to approve the 2nd reading, and we can bring our sleeping bags and pillows, and we'll hash it out on the 14th, because I think it'll be a nice long meeting, and we should have plenty of input. So, Councilor Daniels.
I just got to add, at this point, if a random citizen called me up and said, Councilor Daniel, I saw that the council passed the 2nd reading of the URA plan last night. So what does the URA plan on doing? I wouldn't be able to answer them because right now there's such a big list. It's just a big wish list. Nobody really knows for sure what the URA is going to do. That's why I'm going to vote no.
Mr. Mayor, and my contention is the public hearing is already closed. So there will be no availability for citizens to refute or even comment on the projects that are whittled down, if they are whittled down at all.
We open every public meeting with citizen comments.
That's not the same as a public hearing. I mean, it's a totally different format. Anyone can comment, and why even have a public hearing then?
The comments are all put in the record, whether it's in the public comments before the meeting.
They're
or
also
during the
only given
public
3 minutes to respond, isn't that correct?
And I didn't really limit anybody the last time. I think we had a county commissioner up there that was concerned about his time, and I said he wasn't on the clock. I've never brought a timer in. Councilor Stevenson brought a timer in a couple times, but I've never gone that far. So anyways, that's kind of the way I look at it. I'd have no problem. Somebody called me up, I could say, well, this is what they're looking at, potentially. And we have a list that's been whittled down from the other list. And, they'll say, well, what are you talking about? Why would you even want to do that? So, well, we're going to find out. Maybe that's not even going to be one of their priorities. But we have a list. We could tell somebody, anybody that called us, this is what they're looking at. We've had this list that's been going up and down and been changing, but we've had the list. So that's just my opinion.
I'll just reiterate, the list is just a list of possibilities. I would like to be able to tell citizens, this is what the URA plans on doing. There is a big difference between having a list of ideas and a list of actual projects.
Okay. And I would offer that I think the URA has, we've heard from Mr. Hewlett and Ms. Hasnerole and Commissioner Blakey. They've been under the gun and they've been meeting extra, quite a few extra meetings. So, right.
He called me commissioner. I was thinking, I got a pay raise.
Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Blakey. So, anyways, I'll leave it at that. Further discussion? Okay, those in favor of reading ordinance 4607 for the second time, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries 4-3.
Approving the second reading of ordinance 4607 by title only. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lewiston, Idaho, amending the urban renewal plan for the North Lewiston Tax Revenue Allocation Area, the Nez Perce Terrace Tax Revenue Allocation Area, and the Downtown Lewiston Tax Revenue Allocation Area. Authorizing the city clerk to transmit a copy of this ordinance and other required information to Nez Perce County and other officials. Providing for a limitation on actions against the amended plan after 30 days from the effective date of the ordinance. Providing for a waiver of the reading of the rules, providing for separability, and providing an effective date.
Okay. On to unfinished and new business. City Councilor comments. Do we have any City Councilor comments tonight?
Mr. Mayor?
Pro Tem Johnson.
I have a few comments, and I'll keep it short. I know everybody's hot from the AC not working, but I just want to make some comments about the all the budget work sessions that we've had. I know we've had several so far, and the directors have presented us with many increased proposals. However, I highly doubt that any of us here would be aware of the specific needs. For example, the exhaust extractor from the fire department or the 911 server from the police department, if they hadn't brought those needs to our attention. Just a couple weeks ago, we were told that the general fund is in deficit by $162,000, and we're going to need to raise property taxes by 1% just to make up the shortfall automatically. So, I see clearly we're moving forward with leaving the URA open, which is going to cause us to lose $400,000 in street maintenance, and then just the other week we heard that we may lose another $400,000 due to the county levy. So, because they've got to build that bridge up in McGarry for $1 million. So, I'll keep it short. What I would like to do is propose that we hear on the flip side from the various department directors with a contingency plan, not a gloom and doomsday scenario, but just a common sense approach at just 3% from each department across the board. I think that's fair, and I think they can come up with a way, not the sky's falling, but just come up with a plan to where they can scale back their departments by 3%. And I feel like, there's no excuse. If we have to raise taxes 1% just to balance the general fund, then perhaps we're living beyond our means.
Thank you. Other councilor comments tonight? Councilor Daniel.
It's hot outside. Don't leave your dog in a vehicle with the windows rolled up, or your child for that matter, because, yeah, just don't do it. I'll break a window. So.
It's good advice. Check your oil and make sure your antifreeze is filled up too. Councilor Blakey.
Urban renewal meeting tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Opportunity for the public to attend and make comments. We encourage comments. We encourage anybody to come to those meetings, and we like to hear from them. We also will meet on Thursday at 12 o'clock. Again, and you may be asking, why are we not meeting tomorrow night at 5 o'clock? Because there is a conflict with the Valley Vision dinner out there. And so it was decided to move that meeting back to noon because of the conflict. But it was discussed, and we looked at staying true to our word on that as close as we could. Second of all, I had a chance to go to the area of the Association, it's hot. Association of Idaho Cities. And I have to admit, again, it is kind of an upbeat group of people there. I was just impressed. The mayors from cities of 200 and 300 to the mayors of Boise and larger cities like Boise, the amount of pride that I hear from the public officials who are out there doing their best to represent everybody out there in TV land. And I just came away from there feeling pretty proud of Idaho. I came away with a statistic that I did share with Jed, and then I understand that's been shared later, that Idaho was ranked number 5th in the nation in growth. If you throw out the oil shale states, we would be number 1. And that's a very proud statistic. And I think Idaho is moving forward, and we need to applaud ourselves for all the work that the people have done, which is people like us, to help us grow forward. That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Millen?
Really quick, some exciting news. There's been about 25,000 people who have used the library in the last 2 months. It's a pretty excellent number, so.
Good.
Very quick.
Okay. I had the opportunity to speak at the Civic Theater this weekend. I forgot all about it until a buddy of mine reminded me that I was on the hook for welcoming the band. And really, when I got up there to talk, it was one of these deals that I was talking with one of the guys. He's from Seattle, grew up here, but he's from Seattle. He's in the band. And he said, just talk about what we've got going on. And, this is just a Saturday in June. And what we had going on in town, there's a 3-on-3 tournament downtown. But we had a lot going on. The Northwest Brew Fest was going on up at the Fair Building. It was packed. We had the roller derby girls out there at the LC roller skating rink. For those that like roller derby, professional bull riding was going on. And by God, I got to welcome Elvis into the house. So I thought that was great. And there was a pretty decent turnout. I don't know what the late show was like, but no, everybody seemed to have a good time. The press was there heckling me from the front row. I'll add. One other comment. I respect the opinions of everybody on this council, and I hope you respect mine. And we have had some good debates. We don't always see eye to eye, but I do respect it, and I do remember what you say. One thing that just gets me, though, and I just want you to think about it, I know we're going to reconsider this, but we had an opportunity to facilitate a development tonight that would have raised a significant amount of property tax revenue into this area, and we turned it down. I mean, I can guarantee you there have probably been 20 houses built within the next 8 or 9 months up there in that development. So when we start talking about the tax revenue side of things, and then we're inhibiting a developer from, and believe me, a developer that was on the rocks no more than 3 or 4 years ago, that have come back and they've been successful. They weathered the storm up there. We need to start paying attention to that kind of stuff. That's a big development, and it's not going to be built out anytime soon, but they're pretty much built out in their first phase, even through the housing downturn and all that. So just let's kind of consider some of that stuff as we debate in the future. It was way different than an alley vacancy, so I'll leave it at that. Anything else?
Comment?
Yes, Councilor.
I have to reply to that. When it comes to vacations of public right-of-way, things that are for public use, it shouldn't be about, it shouldn't necessarily be about dollars. It should be about whether it's right or wrong to do. Now, in this case, it sounds like the individual who had gotten up and said that it would have a negative impact on his property, sounds like he had changed his mind. And if that's the case at our next meeting, then I'll make the motion to reconsider myself.
Okay. We also had an individual that said an apartment complex was going to negatively impact his property, so something to think about.
And that's a lot different.
Okay, city manager comments. Mr. Marsh?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Following up on Councilor Blakey's comment at Association of Idaho Cities and Councilor Randall earlier today, there was a lot of good information, a lot of networking, and so I'll be sharing with Mr. Bennett perhaps a work session where we can actually have this item as a topic to vet out some of the topics and share more with you. So whether it be July or August. But one final thing, also a very good piece of news, and it's piggybacking with the state. They recognize really we were number one in not just population growth, but economic growth when you subtracted the oil state companies. But in order to continue that momentum, the state has unveiled a program where there's tax credits. And it's not just for new businesses, it's for existing businesses. And in the rural areas, it's if you can create 20 new jobs, and in the urban areas, 50 new jobs, but over a 15-year period. And in return, there'll be up to a 30% tax credit given to businesses. So we wanted to share that. We'll provide more details as we move forward. But there is a negotiation process there that would occur. But the director of Department of Commerce with the state was there, and on behalf of the governor. And so they're trying to brainstorm, they're trying to be creative and assist businesses as they move forward. So, and that's not just limited to either income tax or property, it's a three-legged stool. So they'll be looking at the full package of sales tax responsibility, et cetera. So some relief for our businesses.
Okay, thank you.
One thing to bring up too is that recently Lewiston was picked number 2 as one of the best cities for manufacturing jobs in the country for small towns. So that's something to be proud of.
Okay, advisory board and commission appointments. Do we have any? Councilor Maldonado.
There's one opening on the library board, and we'd
Okay.
like to fill that because they're trying to get their strategic plan in place,
Okay.
and they would like to have that full. So applications are now being taken by Carrie, I assume.
Okay. So library board opening. I've contacted, we had four applicants for the Disability Advisory Commission. I've contacted 3 of them. I left a message for the 4th, but it looks like we'll try and do some interviews this Thursday. Would you be available Thursday about 3:30?
I'll have to check, but tentatively, yes.
Yeah, we'd do it at City Hall, and I think Councilor Randall was expressed interest in being the liaison, and so if we could do that, I think, and I told everybody it wasn't not so much the interview process, but more of a let's get to know you and what perspectives you bring in and stuff like that. So, and we could probably use another member if anybody else is interested. So, anything else on that? Work session agenda topics. Do you have any coming up? Anything else anybody else wants to bring up? Okay. Well, with that, I guess we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.